Hello, everyone. Before I officially call the meeting to order, I'll just take a quick moment to run through what's on our agenda this evening. I know we have Kim in the BevCam booth. Kim, it's nice to see you. Feels like it's been a while. Welcome back. Welcome back to everybody after the summer break. I know we had one summer meeting, but it's nice to be back for our first regular meeting. We do have some routine business on the agenda tonight, but we also have 5 public hearings that we'll take up beginning at 7:15. As people may know, those have to be taken up at their posted time, although it's likely that we may have to end up doing a little juggling on at least one, which means it will be opened and recessed, but we will get to all of those. Members of the public who are here to speak in those public hearings can sign up on the sign-up sheets in front of the city clerk. Sign up for the public hearing that you are here to speak on. I will say that many more times throughout the course of this meeting. And after we get through our public hearings, then we also will have a chance to take a break for some committee work, brief committee work, and then we'll be back to wrap all of that up. So with that, I'll officially call to order this regular meeting of the Beverly City Council, Tuesday, September 5th, 2023, 7 o'clock p.m. Ms. Kent, will you please call the roll?
Bowen? Here. Crowley?
Here.
Feldman? Here. Hausman?
Here.
Rand?
Here.
Rotundo?
Here.
St. Hilaire?
Here.
Sweeney?
Here.
And Flowers.
Here. Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. Councillor Bowen, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and if people would join us in a moment of silence for Donald Nino Lombardi. This is our first regular meeting back since Nino's passing, and you may be familiar, Nino is a Beverly artist. Many of the pieces of art in this room are Nino's artwork. You may have at some point received a rock painted like a butterfly or a ladybug from him, and so if we could remain standing for a moment of silence for Nino. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Councillor Bowen. As I said, Nino was a familiar Beverly face and a Beverly artist, a regular on BevCam, and many people know him, know his art, and remember him fondly, and he is certainly very missed. We did have one citizen speaker who had reached out to the clerk before 9:30 asking to speak, Carol Rain. I don't see her here, so we will go right to acceptance of minutes of previous meetings. We have one set of meeting minutes that we can accept this evening. That's from our special city council meeting from August 21st, 2023. Is there a motion to approve that set of minutes?
Moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0. And a special word of thanks to our Assistant City Clerk, Ms. Dixon, for that set of minutes. They're always extremely thorough and very well done for us. Ms. Kent, let's go to communications from His Honor the Mayor, please.
Order number 223. Dear Honorable City Council, I am pleased to inform you that the City of Beverly has been awarded a $24,047.61 grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, FY22 Fire Prevention and Safety Grant. This grant funding will be used by the fire department to purchase new props to use when delivering public safety messages, assist with teaching adults and children about fire hazards in homes, proper usage of fire extinguishers, and patches for small children child education. The fire prevention and safety grants are part of the assistance to firefighters grants and support projects that enhance the safety of the public and firefighters from fire and related hazards. The primary goal is to reduce injury and prevent death among high-risk populations. Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53A requires both City Council and Mayor approval before any grant, earmark, donation, or gift to the city can be expended for the prescribed purpose. I therefore request the City Council approve this grant by acting on this matter at your upcoming meeting. Thank you. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property, and I would like to note that our Fire Chief, Chief Peter O'Connor, is here with us. Thank you very much, Chief, for being here.
Order number 224. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Mr. William Kosawan, 7 Fairview Street, Danvers, to serve as the Town of Danvers' representative on the Beverly Airport Commission. Attached is a letter from Danvers Town Manager Steve Bartha recommending this appointment along with the application and background information. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services.
Order number 225, Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby appoint, subject to your review and recommendation, Mr. Kevin Gannon of 15 Everett Street, Beverly, to serve on the Veterans Advisory Committee. His term is to be effective until March 1st, 2026. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services as well.
Order number 226, to whom refer, Dear Honorable City Council, as you are aware, the utility work being performed National Grid related to the 115 kV project has begun, and the city recently received its first of 3 road resurfacing payments from the utility company. The $1 million payment has been deposited into the city's road servicing account and requires a transfer into the Road and Sidewalk Improvement Fund to allow it to be expended for its intended use. I am requesting that the City Council approve a fund transfer of $1 million from the Road Resurfacing Account, Fund 056, into the Road and Sidewalk Capital Account, Fund 581, to pay for resurfacing when required. This fund transfer will require a public hearing prior to final action by the City Council. Please initiate action on this request at your upcoming meeting. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Finance and Property, and we'll set that public hearing.
Order number 228. Oh, wait a minute.
Or 227?
Yep. Order number 227. Dear Honorable City Council, I hereby reappoint, subject to your review, as provided in sections 210-3-3 of the Beverly City Charter, John LaLatra to serve as Beverly's Police Chief. The Chief's current contract has a term of January 2020 through January 21st, 2025. This reappointment will result in a new contract superseding the existing one. The term of the new contract will be from on or about September 18, 2023 through the Chief's 65th birthday in May 2027, 3 years and approximately 8 months. Attached is the copy of the contract for your information. Sincerely yours, Michael P. Cahill, Mayor.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Legal Affairs. Let's go to communications from other city officers and boards. Actually, there's none. Let's go to communications, applications, and petitions, please.
Order number 228 from National Grid, a petition 308-27452 Valley Street. Install electric conduits.
Thank you. Please refer that to the Committee on Public Services to set a public hearing.
Order number 229, notice of availability report from the Varian Facility Site, 150 Sawyer Road.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to receive that report and place it on file.
Moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0, and so we'll receive that and place it on file. That brings us to, we have a little time before our first public hearing, and so we can go to motions and orders. And we have 3 proposed ordinance changes or new ordinances that are available for a first vote this evening, which means that, as councilors know, any proposed amendment to an ordinance or ordinance change requires 2 votes for final passage. So if these were to receive affirmative votes this evening, they would be available for final passage at our next regular meeting, which is on the 18th of September. Let's get started with Order 182. Councilor Feldman, this was an order you proposed. I know we won't be able to get into full conversation now, but would you like to say a little bit about your work on this?
Yes, please. I did actually watch the last meeting where there was a robust discussion on this order, and I did speak with Councilor Rotundo, at least in advance of this, as a business owner downtown, and some of the things that were brought up, including we worked with the planning department, with Ms. Wynn in the planning department, about businesses downtown that might be affected, and I worked directly with Assistant City Solicitor Beth Oldmixon on the wording of this. And I just, this ordinance is really not intended to be punitive. It is really in an effort to, should this come up in any other area of the city, I believe the constituents of that area should have the same types of relief in this situation with deliveries if they're happening between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 5 a.m., especially if, I think the big holdup was, that wasn't clear, is that we talked a lot about what deliveries would be exempt, and any business that is serving, their main business is serving that on the premises, for example, something like Dunkin' Donuts, would be exempt from this delivery. And City Solicitor, our Assistant Solicitor, Ms. Olmixon, actually, we tightened up the language a little bit. There's some edits. So we do have this now applying to deliveries made to a store or place of a business that holds a common victual license, which is a list of businesses that would be exempt from this. And I would contend that any of the box stores or chains or larger businesses that would not be exempt from this should not be exempt from this, because I still believe that the intention of this ordinance to protect quiet and peaceful enjoyment during certain hours should be available to all of the citizens of Beverly. So that's the little background on that. And I know it came up whether we had worked with different departments, and it was unfortunate that none of the people that had worked on this were actually here to answer questions. So, so that's what I have to say about that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feldman. Councillors, we do have just a few minutes. I don't know if there's questions or discussion either for Councillor Feldman or just for following up on our discussion last meeting. Councillor Houseman.
Yes, through you to Councillor Feldman.
Please.
So, as a ward councillor, I totally support the intent of this. I guess my question is, and particularly where you want to have quiet enjoyment for neighborhoods, I am wondering about the large grocery stores, such as the one at Shaw's, for example, and what their typical delivery hours are, and sort of how this ordinance came to you, or the motivation for this ordinance sort of came to you. Because I do wonder, I think a lot of stores like that don't take deliveries and stock during their open hours. They do it during their closed hours, and this would seem to take effect during their closed hours. So can you give some background about that?
So in particular, the problem that has been with the Shaws and Beverly Commons, which abuts the buffer zone. And there are other communities that have this in place already. I want to be on that list of communities that are on the last drop of the produce. I think it's one of those things that other communities do have these restrictions in place for high residential areas that do abut grocery stores. So I don't think it's unreasonable to want to be for a large, this is not a mom and pop store, this is not a local business. We can get on that delivery cycle to be later rather than, and they don't open till at least 7. And this goes until 11 p.m. and they close at 9. So there's plenty of other hours that they can receive deliveries. And I would like to protect the constituents in my ward. And like I say, this is specifically about Shaw's and its proximity to Beverly Commons. However, I would make the argument that I believe in this for any other resident that is that close to a grocery store or is receiving noisy deliveries at that hour.
Thank you, and I'm probably going to have to pause us in, 1 minute, but please, Councillor Houseman.
Yeah, just to follow through you. I don't think there's anything in the proposed amendment which references these businesses that might abut or be, say, within 500 feet of a residential district. Did you give consideration to crafting the amendment so that it wouldn't be so broad, so that it would not apply to businesses that did not abut residential neighborhoods, given that seems to be the concern that you're trying to address? And would that be a beneficial and workable amendment?
I'm not sure I understand. If it doesn't abut a residential business in the buffer, there wouldn't be any type of...
So for example, Stop and Shop down off of Elliott Street, I don't think abuts any residential structures and maybe across the street it does, some of the condos, the commons, but some narrowing of the application to make sure that it really only applies in circumstances where there are possible interference with a resident. I totally support the idea of protecting the residential neighborhoods from this kind of disruption. I'm just wondering if it's possible to not make it, to make it somewhat more tailored to address that specifically.
I could discuss that more in looking at some other language, but I mean, the heart of this is unless somebody calls in a violation and has a problem, nothing's going to happen. That's the other, this is not, you have to make a call to that it's a violation for it to be a problem. So it's kind of like the sidewalk shoveling ordinance that I put into place. If nobody's obscured by it, you're not going to get a fine. But so I could take that into further consideration, but I just don't think it's an unreasonable burden to bear by any of the box grocery stores to not get deliveries between 11 and 6.
Yeah,
I mean,
So I'm going to pause us
Okay.
there on that note, because we need to open, we'll return to this conversation, but we do need to open our posted public hearing for 7:15. This is on order 187. Ms. Kent.
Legal notice 2023-187, City of Beverly ordered that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 at 7:15 PM at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers. Live stream on BevCam relative to National Grid Plan 307-06279 to install electric conduits beginning at a point approximately 180 feet southeast of the center line of the intersection of Cabot Street and Federal Street and continuing approximately 35 feet in an east-northeast direction to the property of 240 Cabot Street. And this was in the newspaper on August 25th.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. And I will just say, as I will say again, any members of the public who are here hoping to speak in any of the public hearings, but specifically tonight, the first one, order 187, sign-up sheets are on the desk in front of our city clerk, Ms. Kent, and you can come forward at any point and add your name. Speakers will be taken in the order that they are signed up. I believe we have Michael Kazadi from National Grid here with us. If you would please come to the podium, and if there's any information you'd like to add about this particular petition from National Grid for electric conduit on Federal Street, we'd love to hear it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Kazadi, and I'm representing National Grid at 44 River Street in Beverly. And for this job, we're just petitioning to install about 35 feet of two 5-inch conduits from the existing manhole on Federal Street to the property of 240 Cabot Street.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the council? Councilor Rotundo, please.
I do have just one question because of the area where they're doing paving right now. Is it existing manhole that they'll be going to the existing conduit, or will there be additional digging up to lay the line?
There'll be additional digging.
So will you have that done before the city actually does the paving? Because we're just paving that whole downtown area and then for you guys to come in and dig it up would be kind of a sin.
I can definitely ask about that, but I'll ask about that.
I have an issue with that then, because, I mean, again, we see in the whole intersections being done right now. We've already paused this whole downtown project so that National Grid could bring their gas lines in. Now we're looking to put this in, and I just want to make sure that it's going to be installed prior to the city coming into paving. As you can see this, they've milled the street already. It's, a reasonable request to make sure you have your work done before that's done.
Yep, I'll double check on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Are there other comments or questions? Councilor Rand.
Thank you so much. Is this for service to the bank?
It is, yes.
Okay, for an ATM, or is it like a new line?
I think they're just upgrading their service, so they need more power, so we're bringing in a new line for them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Other questions or comments from members of the council for Mr. Kazadi? Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. Less a question for Mr. Kazadi, but more following up on Councilor Rotundo's observation. I'm curious what opportunities we have to make an approval conditional on that work happening before paving takes place, and sort of what that process would be with our engineering department as well. So it's more of an open question, I guess, not answered tonight.
Good questions, and I just, from a process perspective, this will, when we close the public hearing, of course, as counselors know, we'll go to our subcommittee on public services, and so that also provides that opportunity for that kind of follow-up for questions that you all are raising. Are there other questions or comments from members of the council? Are there any members of the public who are here to speak in the public hearing on Order 187 for National Grid's petition for electric conduit on Federal Street? Seeing none, I'll close that public hearing and refer that back, as I've said, to the Committee on Public Services for further discussion and for follow-up. Councilor Feldman, we have 4 minutes till our next public hearing, so we can come back to the discussion of your proposed ordinance amendment. I think I may have cut off with you speaking. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Not in regards to that at this moment, but are there other questions?
Other questions or comments from members of the council? Councilor Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam President. Just quickly, as I was one of the counselors that raised some reservations after the back and forth dialogue with the solicitor's office, my main concern, which you addressed, Councilor Feldman, is the businesses like the Atomic Cafe or Dunkin' Donuts that are primarily geared towards food or other beverage delivery or service provided in the morning hours, right up against that 6 a.m. timeframe. Mm-hmm. So as long as you allude to, there is an amendment to the language so that we don't run up against the solicitor's office interpretation that those businesses would not have any exemptions. So long as they have exemptions, I am comfortable in passing the ordinance as you proposed with the intent stated. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Councilor Sweeney. Other comments or questions? Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. So I just wanted to echo Councilor Hausman's concern about putting an ordinance on the books if we don't intend to have it enforced fully as written. I think just generally good practice, if we only plan for something to apply to some people or some circumstances, we should narrow it that way up front, because otherwise, if we're putting an ordinance on the books and we think it's only going to be enforced when someone calls, we then open the door for frivolous calls to come in. Competitors might call and complain. We're sort of creating just a lot of, I think, unnecessary confusion and potential for harm. So would love to see either a restriction on sort of distance from a residential unit, or not applying to businesses whose open hours preclude deliveries at that time, so that we're really narrowing in on sort of not harming businesses that have a real need for late or early deliveries, whether they're selling food or they're selling something else at 6 a.m. if they need the delivery to be there before they open. And that really addresses the sort of noise issue specifically close to homes. So if we can tighten up both of those a little bit, I think that would put us as a council at less risk of putting an ordinance on the books that we don't actually intend to see enforced.
Councilor Feldman.
If I may, I actually don't agree with tightening this up anymore. I really do believe that the way this is written, carving out for businesses that operate and have their main business starting at 6 a.m., I don't see any reason why they can't have deliveries before 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. And I don't think it has anything to do with whether they abut a residence or not, because if that is bothering anyone between those hours, I don't see a problem with that being enforced with a $50 fine. Because the only stores that this really applies to are the grocery stores that are getting the deliveries before 6 a.m. and after 11. And I just don't see any reason to get in the weeds with more of the details, because I'm not saying that we only want it to apply to this one instance. I'm saying that I think, and I think the city of Beverly could be reasonably accepting of the fact that we just don't necessarily want deliveries between 11 and 6 at stores that don't need to operate at 6 a.m. selling coffee or pastries. I think we're kind of in the weeds on the details in this one, and I think this, if it was enforced, even if anyone called in, I don't think that's a problem.
I'm going to pause us here again. It's good because we're getting lots of chances to now mull over the conversation, because we need to open our public hearing on Order 188. This is posted for 7:25. Ms. Kent, please.
Legal notice 2023-188. City of Beverly order that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 at 7:25 p.m. at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, live stream on BevCam relative to National Grid Plan 299-20267, Levitt Street, to install electric conduits beginning at a point approximately 430 feet northwest of the center line of the interaction of Sawyer and Colin Street, and continuing 40 feet in a northeast direction. And this was published on August 25th.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Mr. Kazadi, I'll invite you back to the podium if there is more information you'd like to offer on this National Grid petition for electric conduit on Lovett Street.
Yeah, so we are petitioning to install about 40 feet of 1 4-inch conduit from existing pole 2767 to the customer's property.
Thank you, Mr. Kazadi. Councilor Rotundo, and then we'll go to Councilor Rand.
I'm a little confused here. Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one. I'm seeing Lovett Street, which I believe is right behind us, and this is the Briscoe Village. So where is Lovett? Is that where it's starting from Lovett Street and it going all the way down there?
So I'm not sure why it says Lovett Street, but this is on Sawyer. It should be
Okay,
on
so
Sawyer.
I guess I'm a little confused on that. And then the other question is are you just extending existing work out that you're adding to it, that you didn't quantify enough length on it?
So we have existing conduits already in that trench, and we're just reopening that trench and switching out the conduits.
Okay, so it's just the conduit size is being changed out.
Yes, correct.
But the location from Lovett to Sawyer to Colin is really out of whack.
Yeah, it's the work is being done on the Sawyer Street only. It shouldn't be a little bit.
That was all my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rotundo. Councilor Rand, please.
That was my question,
I
too.
wondered. Okay.
Yeah. And I guess I just would like to confirm that this is for, for Anchor Point, or no, sorry, Briscoe Village?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Kazadi. Thank you, councilors. Are there other questions from members of the council? Are there members of the public who wish to speak in the public hearing on Order 188? Councilor Houseman.
Yeah, just procedurally, there's an ambiguity in the application, given the same confusion that's already been raised. So I guess if we were to want to, from my point of view, support this, which seems straightforward enough, our vote should explicitly clarify that Lovett Street is not involved, that it really is only what is depicted on the plot plan that's provided, not the text.
Agreed. And I would anticipate that Public Services will discuss that and refer it back to the full council with that change made, Councilor Husband, but point well taken. And we'll want to make sure of that when we vote this evening. So with that, I will close that public hearing on Order 188, refer that back to the Subcommittee on Public Services for further conversation and for follow-up. Which brings us to opening our public hearing on Order 179. Ms. Kent.
Order number 179. City of Beverly ordered that the City Council and the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. in 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, live stream on BevCam relative to a National Grid Plan 307-82870 to install electric conduits beginning at a point approximately 5 feet east of the center line in the intersection of Ober Street and Lantern Lane and continuously approximately 20 feet in a northeast direction. Install approximately 20 feet in a northeast direction. Install approximately 20 feet plus 1 to 3 conduit encased in concrete on Ober Street. And this was in the newspaper on August 25th.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. Mr. Kazadi, if you would, return to the podium. Offer us any further information on this proposed plan.
Yeah, and we're just petitioning to install about 20 feet of 1 3-inch conduit from the existing manhole 460-1 to the property of 62 Ober Street.
Thank you. Are there questions? Councilor Houseman?
Thank you, Council President. Yeah, unless I'm missing it, there's no plan, plot plan filed with this?
That was my error because it didn't scan well.
Does
have it.
Does it show up on one of, somewhere?
Yes.
Can you direct me to that page?
Ms. Kent, are you getting a hard copy?
Yeah, I'm
Or
getting a hard
Councilor
copy and
Sweeney's
Councilor
going
Sweeney's
to?
looking, yeah.
If I may, while she's looking.
Yes, please.
Is this 20-foot-long conduit going to be in the pavement, requiring cutting up of the pavement of Aubert Street? And if so, how much?
It's going to be at the edge of the street, going on the sidewalk, and then to the customer's property.
It would be helpful to have a plan just to understand how much of the street is disturbed.
Councilor Sweeney, I think, is pulling that up right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll email it to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Are there other questions or comments while Councilor Sweeney is grabbing that plan for councilors to look at? Other questions or comments, councilors? Councilor Houseman.
Another follow-up. This is a President Guanci question. Is this installation already taken place, or is this a future installation that you're looking for permission to?
It's a future installation.
Future. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Do you have that plan in front of you now, Councilor Houseman?
No.
Yes, everybody should have just got an email.
Yep. For both of them, it's for
Would
the
you
next
send it by
order as
email?
well. The 8:30.
Oh, okay.
It's what, I'm sorry?
It's a sketch for the 8:30 National Grid as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kent's saying, councilors, that what Councilor Sweeney's sharing is the sketch that didn't scan properly is also going to be referenced for the 8:30 public hearing. Are there other questions or comments from members of the council on this proposed plan? I'll give Councilor Houseman a minute to take a look at that. Are there members of the public here who hope to speak in the public hearing on this Order 179? Okay. Councilor Houseman, any follow-up?
Yeah. Can you refresh the council's memory as to what the obligations are of National Grid to repave once the street has been opened? Is it a 6-foot patch? Is it to the center line? Or is it just a narrow patch of the same?
The trench is usually about 2 to 3 feet wide. And we usually try to have it repaved the same day. If not, we have metal coverings on it to cover it up.
Okay. All right, thank you. No more questions.
Thank you, Councilor Houseman. Any other questions or comments from members of the council on this one? One more call for members of the public who may want to speak in this public hearing. All right, seeing none, I'll close that public hearing and refer that back also to the Subcommittee on Public Services for further discussion this evening. Thank you, Mr. Kazadi. So now we do have time, a substantive amount of time before our next public hearing. It's posted for 8 o'clock. This is a joint public hearing with the Beverly Planning Board. Members of the public who may be beginning to arrive or watching on BevCam now and heading here, If you would like to sign up to speak in this public hearing, you can come up at any point and add your name to the sign-up sheet in front of Ms. Kent. We also will be taking a brief recess right before this hearing to allow for the planning board members to get settled, and that will also give an opportunity for members of the public who may want to come up during a recess. You're welcome to come up anytime during our meeting, but if you would like to come up, then we'll be taking a brief recess then. So with that, we'll return to our conversation under motions and orders. This is on proposed ordinance. This is Order 182, Councilor Feldman's proposed ordinance pertaining to deliveries. Councilors, let's resume conversation there. Councilor Feldman, you had just offered some of your thoughts on not restricting the language further, not tweaking the language further. Are there other questions, comments, or discussion from councilors on this one?
Madam President,
Oh,
just a clarification, what is the process on this order? What's the next step? We approving it tonight?
No, thank you, Councilor St. Hilaire. It's not available for final passage this evening because it didn't get a first vote at our last meeting. It was read, it had a first reading, but it would need a first vote this evening, and if in the affirmative, it would need a second vote for final passage on the 18th of September.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other discussion from councilors? Is there a motion to approve Order 182 for a first vote?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? Oh, Councilor Sweeney.
Just one quick point, Madam President, thank you. So a big sticking point for me as discussed was the revised language that would exempt businesses with common vic permits that operate in the morning, or just in general, common vic permits targeted at those that operate in the morning. Procedurally, how do we need to go about incorporating that revised language into
Councilor
this
Feldman,
reading?
do you have the revised language?
I do. And also to that point, I forgot to mention, this was originally crafted to intend to do that, but we tightened it up in the fact that we actually pulled the list of victual licenses and made sure that what we were looking to protect was legitimately with the words and the licenses that were. So it originally said the sale of food or alcoholic beverages to be consumed on premises in which they are sold. But this one, the language now reads, no store or business shall accept delivery of any item or sale between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. This section shall not apply to deliveries made to a store or place of business that holds a valid common victuar license. It's much shorter now. It's if you have that, then you are exempt. And then violators of this section and then it goes on from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Feldman. Also, because I was going to ask you to pass that new language to the clerk for a reading of the new language. I would actually entertain a motion for us to take just a 5-minute recess now for the city clerk and I to be able to consult with the solicitor's office about.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, we'll take a 5-minute recess and be right back.
If it had some reference to residential.
much, everyone. Call the council back to order. And our city solicitor, Stephanie Williams, is here with us. Thank you very much, Solicitor Williams. And so if you wouldn't mind, we were discussing or beginning to discuss Order 182. And if you would not mind just offering us some thoughts on that, and particularly a question I had just paused for, if you wouldn't mind just clarifying this as well, was just to ask if with revised language, it can be discussed and acted on, or if it needs to be published again as revised.
Yes, it may be discussed, it may be acted on, and no, it does not need to be published again.
Thank you. Thank you. Solicitor, I don't know if you had any other overarching or sort of general thoughts about this.
Oh, you mean you're looking at the amended language, correct? I can answer questions, but I don't,
Okay, thank you.
unless there's something you'd like me to speak to.
Does any member of the council have questions or comments, further discussion, either just picking up where we were at or questions for Solicitor Williams as well? Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. I was just hoping to clarify in the amended language, I think one of the concerns I was hearing in our last meeting was that the way it was worded might just mean that deliveries from food service organizations couldn't take place during that time, and that the intention was that they would be exempt, of deliveries to their establishments between those times. So just wanted to clarify whether the amended language also addresses that or just changes the way we're talking about the food establishments.
I believe that if the business hours, if they're still serving between the hours of 11 and 6 p.m. and that is their business, that they can make deliveries. From what I had.
So my understanding, if I may,
Solicitor, please.
would you like me to
Yes,
respond?
yes, please.
So was initiated by Councilor Feldman, and I don't know if you've spoken about it tonight. I know Councilor Feldman wasn't here a few weeks ago, that the intention was to address a situation where there were deliveries to a business at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And so the intention of the ordinance is to limit the hours during which a business can receive deliveries. It's about receipt of deliveries. It's not about items leaving the business to go somewhere else. And so, given that there was some discussion around ambiguity in the language that was discussed 2 weeks ago, and that Councilor Feldman wasn't here to talk about what the objective was of the ordinance, it seemed to make sense to make this change. And the intention, my understanding that the intention all along was to exempt from this restriction on deliveries between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. places like, for example, Dunkin' Donuts, which by definition and by virtue of their business needs to be able to receive its product at 5:30 in the morning in order to be able to conduct business. That was my understanding, and that was what the intention was of this language. And so if that's your intention, Councilor Feldman, this language achieves that goal.
Correct. To Councilor Bowen's point,
Thank you,
I
Solicitor.
think the clarification is, from what I'm hearing, is if a business can make a delivery to a residence, which, like, were you saying that if they deliver food or items, like, it's only the receipt of deliveries, the way it's written? I'm not sure what the other delivery part you were.
Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. Yes, so it sounds like the ordinance is written about receipt of deliveries, and the new language would exempt food service providers from that provision, that they can't receive deliveries, and that there's no mention or intention of mentioning anything about anything from a business out.
No.
The discussion 2 weeks ago seemed to indicate that how it was worded before might have only applied the exemption to that. So it sounds like that was confusion on all of our parts that is cleared up now in the new language, at least.
Because it is worded as deliveries to a business, not like leaving a business, I think in the heart of it, it says it's the receipt of a delivery truck to the business. So I think that was clear in there, according to solicitor.
Thank you. Thank you, councilors. Other discussion, questions, or comments on this one? Counselor St.
Do we
Hilaire.
have a motion on the floor?
Yes, we do.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor St. Hilaire. So again, this is for a first vote, not for final passage. All those in favor on this first vote of approving Order 182 with the revised language? Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. So that's carries 7-2. And as I mentioned, we will have a second vote for final passage at our next regular meeting, and that will be on September 18th. Thank you very much, Solicitor Williams, for your input there. We also have available for a first vote this evening, Order 196.
Order number 196. Let me just get the shortcut version. Downtown Beverly Parking District, purpose statement, the Downtown Beverly Parking District is created to manage public parking spaces to maximize public benefit by ensuring that reasonable access to parking is available to the variety of users within the downtown district. Reasonable access to parking will support a vibrant economy in an active downtown mixed-use district. The fee for on-street parking regulations defined devices in the downtown Beverly Parking District will be up to $1 per hour. This fee shall not apply or be enforced against any passenger vehicle or motorcycle displayed a veterans, disabled veteran, National Guard, awarded medal veteran, Gold Star family, or Medal of Liberty plate issued by the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles, any comparable out-of-state plate issued by similar government agency, or a veterans parking sticker issued by the City of Beverly's Veterans Service Department. And this was in the newspaper on August 25th.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. Counselor Rotundo, Counselor Crowley, this was filed by the two of you. Anything that you'd like to comment or add at this time?
Just that I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from our veterans. Thanking the council for bringing this initiative forward. So that's pretty much it. I mean, there have been a few things that were a little skeptic, but otherwise it's been pretty positive feedback on it.
Thank you, Counselor Rotundo.
Same here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Counselor Crowley. Counselors, any comments, questions, or discussion? This is again available for first vote only. Final passage would be at our next meeting. Any discussion on this one? Is there a motion to approve Order 196 for a first vote?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0, and then we will return to it on the 18th for final passage. On Order 197, also available this evening for a first vote. Ms. Kent.
Order number 197, Section 270-41, parking prohibited at all times upon the following streets or highways or parts thereafter. Parking is hereby prohibited at all times on Woodland Avenue, both sides to Green Street to Livingston Ave. And this was in the newspaper on August 25th.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. Counselor Rotundo, this is your order. Anything you'd like to add or say?
Just to thank Ms. Kent for fixing my mistake in my writing of it, because when I read it, I'm like, oh, I mistakenly forgot to put Woodland Ave. But it really was in response to the bridge being down, and they're having cars on both sides and causing possible visual sight problems, especially with schooling right now. So I appreciate support for this ordinance, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Counselors, any questions, comments, or discussion? Is there a motion to approve Order 197 for a first vote this evening?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0, and so that will also be available for final passage at our September 18th meeting. I know that we have members of the public who are beginning to arrive for the 8 p.m. public hearing. We will take a brief recess in a moment before that, but I just want to mention while we're still in session that members of the public who wish to speak can come up at any point or during the recess as the planning board is getting settled in and sign up to speak in the public hearing or the following one, which is on National Grid Plan for installing electric conduit at Cherry Hill Drive. Those sign-up sheets are in front of our city clerk, Ms. Kent, and you can sign up at any point. Speakers will then be taken during the public comment section of the public hearing in the order that they are signed up. So you'll hear me say that again, but that is the process for anyone who wishes to speak in that public hearing. So with that, councilors, I would entertain a motion to take an 8-minute recess so we can get settled.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Be back.
open meeting law.
Well, Xerox.
Thank you very much, everyone. I will call the City Council back to order and say thank you and also a welcome to members of the Beverly Planning Board who are here with us this evening for our joint public hearing, and also to Chairwoman Ellen Hutchinson. Ellen, it's a pleasure to have you back up here again. Thank you.
Happy to join you. Thank you.
Thank you. So, members of the council, I will officially open the public hearing on Order 184. This is a joint public hearing with the Beverly Planning Board, and I will read the official notice. Notice is hereby given in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5, that the Beverly City Council and the Beverly Planning Board will hold a joint public hearing on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 at 8 p.m. in the City Council Chamber, City Hall, 3rd floor, 191 Cabot Street, Beverly, Mass., relative to a proposed zoning ordinance amendment affecting various sections which include 1. Amendments to Section 300-5, terms defined, to include a definition for accessory dwelling unit, both detached and attached, remove definition for accessory apartment, include an explicit definition for transient lodging, and to clarify the definition of bed and breakfast establishments. 2, adoption of a new section 300-55 accessory dwelling units, ADUs, replacing existing section 300-55 accessory apartments, allowing ADUs in most single-family residential districts, detached and attached ADUs, non-relatives members to reside in ADUs, requiring owner occupancy of one of the dwelling units and one off-site parking space per ADU, setting dimensional and design standards, and more. And 3, additional minor amendments to other sections for the purpose of, among other things, removing redundant or unnecessary language and creating consistency within definitions. Copies of the proposed amendment are on file in the Planning Department and in the City Clerk's office, posted on the Planning Department website, and are available for public review. And this was in the paper on August 23rd and 25th. Ms. Hutchinson.
Thank you. The September 5th, 2023 meeting of the Beverly Planning Board is hereby called to order. I would welcome a motion to recess for public hearing, please. So moved. I have a motion by Mr. Beckwith, seconded by Mr. Miller. Sorry about that. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes. We are now in public hearing. I turn it back to Madam President.
Thank you very much. Before I invite our planning director, Ms. Darlene Wynn, to come up and open us with a presentation to help set some context for members of the council, members of the planning board, as well as members of the public who are here in person and joining us via BevCam and watching online, I just wanted to mention again for those members of the public who may be coming in at this point or still on their way here listening as we go, the sign-up sheet to speak in the public comment portion of this public hearing is now here in front of me. It just moved slightly over from where it had been. You are welcome to come up at any point, even as we're beginning the presentation, and add your name to this list. When we come to the public comment section of the meeting, we'll take public speakers in the order that they're listed here. And every public speaker, in the interest of making sure that it's equitable and fair and everyone gets to be heard, will have up to 2 minutes to address the council. And when we get to that point, Vice President Rotundo will be helping us by keeping time. I will repeat that a few more times just so that as folks are coming, they know where to come and sign up. With that, Ms. Wynn, I would like to invite you to come forward and offer us any background or presentation. And I do want to also acknowledge that Mayor Cahill has joined us. Thank you very much, Mayor, for being here. Thank you, Ms. Wynn.
Thank you, Council President Flowers and Chairwoman Hutchinson. And I just want to call out Ken Clausen, my Assistant Planning Director, and thank you. And Ms. Williams and Mr. Dole for their help on putting all this together.
And I apologize, Mr. Clausen, that seat where you are is just directly behind Councilor Feldman from me, and I often miss people there. I apologize. No problem. Not your fault, Councilor Feldman.
So I'm going to try and go through this somewhat quickly just to give an overview and set this groundwork. This is a very similar presentation to the one I gave in May, but some of the details related to what we actually submitted for the ordinance are a little bit different. But for anybody new to this meeting who might not have seen that prior meeting, I want to give some context. And I'm going to focus primarily on the accessory dwelling unit piece and not on the other kind of grammatical and kind of definitional changes. So the background is this came out of our master plan and also out of our community housing plan. So we're pursuing 2 action items from each of those plans to update the ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units rather than accessory apartments, which is what we currently allow. Just noting on the right, we did a year-long process with MAPC, that's our regional planning agency, in 2021, and we had a resident community steering committee that helped us through that community engagement process, where we had public forums and focus groups. We looked at best practice and other research and did surveys to understand the local context. A part of that, too, was a very data-driven support tool that the regional planning agency did to help quantify the potential impacts of different elements of an ADU, which is a unique approach that we did in Beverly, and I'm not sure other communities had really done that. So what is an accessory dwelling unit? Simply, it's a secondary dwelling unit within the same lot as a larger primary dwelling unit, and it can come in many forms. Our current accessory apartment bylaw, which is similar but restricts only to relatives allowed to live in it, it only allows attached units or units within an existing building, but you could have a detached unit like a garage or above a garage. You could have an attached unit. You could create a new unit on your lot that would also be detached. So those are just some examples. And here's just pictures of some not in Beverly necessarily, but other pictures of what, an ADU above a garage, a detached unit, and one where an entire floor was converted. So what are the benefits of accessory dwelling units? One, they're more likely to be affordable compared to multifamily brand new apartment construction. So they become less costly option for middle income households. They're a good entry point into the market for smaller families, or kind of a step for people who are looking to downsize but don't want to leave the community. They also allow seniors to maybe keep their larger home but rent out a smaller unit to a single person or a couple. They have a low impact on the environment and the neighborhood. They do not, involve removing large open space areas. They're not large construction projects. They are built where there's already water, sewer, and street infrastructure. So it's a kind of gentle density, one unit here and there throughout a neighborhood. And then they, as I kind of mentioned before, they provide more options for homeowners who might be feeling financially pressed and want to be able to stay in their home and rent their unit. And one of the questions that comes up is, why do we even need more housing options in Beverly? There's a number of different demographic factors, but one is that throughout the entire nation, household size is decreasing, which drives the demand for more housing units as fewer people live in each of those housing units, as family sizes are generally smaller than they used to be. Housing creation from over the 30 years from 1990 to 2020 was significantly less than from between 1960 and 1990. So in Beverly specifically, we built 4,800 housing units between 1960 and 1990, and only 1,900 housing units between 1990 and 2020, all while population is increasing and our household size is decreasing. And as people will note here, more than 2/3 of our housing units in Beverly recently have been built downtown, so we're looking at this as an option to kind of spread out some of the new housing units that are built and the housing opportunities. And then I think I mentioned before too, just generally housing cost has been increasing for both ownership and rentals, and this is another option to provide more affordable housing for people and to keep people employed, people who work in Beverly, living in Beverly, and provide additional options for housing opportunity. So our intent in establishing this ordinance was to create feasible alternatives for the aging population, empty nesters, seniors who want to stay here, encourage a diverse population of residents by providing additional housing options that are generally affordable, enable homeowners of single-family dwellings to generate rental income so that they can still occupy their principal dwelling, and just creating additional units in a low-impact and sustainable manner. So our current accessory apartment language, as they're temporary units that are attached or within a primary home, up to 900 square feet, 2-bedroom limit, 2-occupant limit, requires 2 parking spaces per unit, requires a special permit before the Zoning Board of Appeals, and only family members or caretakers can live there, and then upon their death or change in occupancy, the kitchen has to be removed within 90 days. So we are looking to kind of formalize and streamline that process and change it a little bit. So the key decisions we thought about with MAPC were location, dimension, design, where are they allowed, what do they look like, and what other kind of restrictions do we need to apply to these accessory dwelling units, the process, how do we permit them, whether they're by right or special permit, and then who should be able to live in them. Are they restricted affordability? Do we limit the number of bedrooms and occupants? How many are allowed in the community entirely? We did not do any of those things. We didn't limit the bedrooms or occupants. We didn't put a cap on the number of ADUs. So our proposal in the zoning that was submitted in June. So after the public hearing in May, we revised the draft ordinance and we submitted it in the end of June. And it largely is mostly the same there's some minor changes and tweaks and additional things based on comments that we received. But generally, ADUs or accessory dwelling units are allowed by right in most residential zoning districts, subject to the new standards that are design and dimensional that are in the section 300-55. And then the RHD and RSD, which are higher density districts, don't typically have a lot of single family units, require a special permit. So this map shows where they would be. So the green is where they would be allowed by right. The blue is where they'd be allowed by special permit, and then the gray areas are non-residential areas where they would not be allowed. And so I don't want to dwell on this too much, but just to highlight, so the tool that MAPC created determined that up to 7,500 parcels could be eligible for an attached ADU, and that up to 4,600 parcels could be eligible for detached ADU. It's based on kind of build out and zoning characteristics, and it's an estimate. 7,500 is about 50% of the parcels in Beverly. I had something else, but I think it comes up later, but I don't think we're going to hit that number. I just want to make sure that that's clear at all. That's a very large number, but so to jump into the regulations and the proposed regulations, there were kind of 4 main administrative priorities when we did this. One of the 2 units must be owner occupied, that parking must be provided on site, so within the property itself, that there be no affordability requirement for either the primary or the accessory dwelling unit, and that variances could not be used in order to create an accessory dwelling unit. So as I mentioned before, I'll jump into some more details, but the proposed amendment replaces the city's existing accessory apartment language in full, and then there are other areas where we had to go through and kind of correct and adjust. And as noted, I gave a couple housekeeping items earlier today that relate to that as well. So our proposed regulations, the definition of an accessory dwelling unit is a self-contained dwelling unit providing complete living facilities for the use of one or more individuals, constituting a single family with permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation, located in or attached to an existing one-family, single-family dwelling, or in a separate building on the same lot where at least one of the units is owner-occupied. And some of the general or more specific criteria related to all accessory dwelling units. For unit size, that they'll be less than 1,000 square feet or 50% of the principal building's gross floor area, whichever is smaller. And just a note here, the state has a definition for accessory dwelling units that is slightly different. Half the floor area of the principal dwelling or 900 square feet, whichever is smaller. Since our definition is different, our vote would have to be a majority vote, supermajority. Yes, supermajority vote rather than a simple majority, because we're not. It's relating to the state's law that allows us a simple majority for certain housing-related votes. So then to go on, the property owner, as I mentioned before, the property owner must live on site in either the primary residence or the accessory dwelling unit. So the property, the lot itself is owner occupied. There must be one on-site parking space. Only one accessory dwelling unit is permitted per parcel. The deed cannot be split between the ADU and the principal building, so it must remain a single property under single ownership. And transient lodging, aka short-term rentals, are not permitted in the accessory dwelling unit. Proposed, so then we got into a little bit, so the attached units have some slightly different dimensional or design kind of requirements than the detached units. And so this just breaks them down a little bit. So an accessory dwelling unit, again, we're trying to be as clear as possible for people. An attached unit is within the existing principal building or attached by new construction to a principal building. containing a one-family, single-family dwelling where at least one of the units is owner-occupied. That may involve modification to the exterior of the building. So it doesn't have to stay entirely within the existing envelope. You can do renovations. Only one front entrance shall be the primary entrance, but if there are already two, one should be designed to be look primary where the other looks secondary. And then stairways to upper floors shall be enclosed. And then for the detached, again, so those are an accessory dwelling unit located in a structure on a lot that is separate from the principal building and is smaller than the principal building. ADU must not be taller than the main house and less than 35 feet. It should be clearly secondary to the main house and behind the main house. And the building form and architectural style shall be complementary to the principal building. And principal building, same thing as main house. I started to use more common language, but that's what I'm referring to. So this is what I was saying. Again, the study suggests, 55% of the city's parcels could be eligible to build an ADU, an attached ADU. That scenario is highly unlikely. Largely, there's a cost involved in building an ADU. Not everyone's going to be interested. Some of those lots may not be eligible based on the requirement that no variances be issued in order to create the ADU, and that this data was done before that was on the table, so that's important to keep in mind that that's not factored in. For some background research, there was a study in 2018 that said at the time, on average, 2.5 accessory dwelling units were permitted each year in a community. I'm estimating it's probably higher now. Communities without family requirements tend to have higher unit creation. And then, for an example, in Salem, following their 2021 adoption of an accessory dwelling unit ordinance, there were 6 units created the year following that. And then that's really it for mine. I kind of went back to this slide to end with, but that's kind of the end of my presentation. Happy to hear questions. I'll go up there, but I can come back to this if I have to.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nguyen. So, Madam Chair, as we had sort of chatted about, we'll undertake this public hearing, this joint public hearing, with the same format we used last time. So there'll be a chance for a member of the council to ask a question or to make a comment, and then I'll turn it over to you to do the same for a member of the planning board, and we'll alternate back and forth. And then we will, if our discussion is going long, we'll pause so that members of the public are not waiting indefinitely for their opportunity to speak. We want to make sure we hear from members of the public. And I think in both cases, the city council, because this is the day after Labor Day, will leave our public hearing open, continue at our next regular meeting to conclude our conversation. And I know the planning board will then take up their process, and once both components of the public hearing are closed, we'll receive a recommendation from the planning board and be able to move forward from there. That's the process. So let's begin. Members of the council, is there a councilor who would like to begin with a question or comment for Ms. Nguyen or members of the team? Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. So I jotted down a few comments, and I'll try and keep them short, knowing that we have more opportunities for comment and to hear from planning board and members of the public. But just wanted to address a couple of things that were different from when I first submitted some ideas last November up to now. And then a couple of things that are still sort of, I think, just worthy of discussion tonight and going forward. But first of all, just very excited that this has reached this stage and in this form. I think it's really strong, and I think the number of people in the room tonight and probably watching indicates how much support there is for these provisions. So very excited. One of the things that was in a previous draft that's not here is a specific requirement for affordability. I'm comfortable with that at this stage, even though affordability is one of the driving factors for me in wanting to adopt this policy. I understand sort of why it's difficult to implement, given the current state of state policy and city policy. And so I think taking the first step, these are likely to be naturally affordable to start out with, but I want us to keep the conversation alive. Would love to make sure we're monitoring affordability of these units as they roll out, even if that's, an informal survey of property owners, just so that we have some information about how it's going and are ready to revisit that and find some creative ways to sort of impose a little bit more if needed. And also to think about what incentives we can put in place that might not be written into the ordinance as a requirement, but might be things that the city can do to encourage homeowners who want to make this conversion to make the unit affordable. Could be grants for construction tied to affordability pledges, things like that. Also, the square footage has reduced. I think that's a positive. It responded to feedback that was raised in previous public meetings, so on board with that. There are a few other of the sort of design features tightened up. I think that's really good and also reflects what people are looking for. A couple of things that I still would like us to think about before we finally pass this. Around parking, I think we're trying to walk a fine line between the pressure that people feel to get around the city and not have to worry too much about parking and traffic, and the fact that when we impose parking requirements on our zoning, it limits the availability and affordability of housing. So I think that's a compromise here. Comfortable with that compromise to get it going, but I do think the provision in this draft that says the single parking spot reserved for this unit on site can't be a tandem spot goes a little bit too far. So I'd like us to think about removing that small piece. It's a very small detail, but I have a tandem parking spot now. It works. It's not anyone's favorite, but it does allow to, you can get the cars off the street. That's what people want. And it gives people an option to use a space that might be a little tight, but is workable for the people living there. And so anything that would rule out an otherwise feasible unit, I think we should be really, really careful about. So I would suggest we take another look at that tandem parking piece. And then I think just the last piece for me is sort of the bigger picture question around allowing variances to enable ADUs to be created. I think the specificity around sort of how and where they can be created is really helpful. But I'm nervous about specifically calling out one usage of space on a property that can't be, where a homeowner can't ask for relief from dimensional requirements. So if a proposed addition is going to be 6 inches over the line, a homeowner can typically go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and say, hey, I really want to expand my family room. My neighbor doesn't mind at all because that wall is covered in plants. They don't hear anything. They're happy with it. I'm happy with it. It's only 6 inches. Is this, something that the city can allow? And we would be saying that homeowner can still do that for their family room, for their own use, to expand their footprint, but they can't ask for that same relief to give somebody else a home. So that I don't love. I think it's also something that if it's a sticking point for the administration, it can be revisited at another time when we see how it's impacting homeowners who might want to create an ADU. But I think that bears some more discussion. And then the last thing to just think about is if we can discuss a little bit more with Ms. Wynn, perhaps, about short-term rentals. I support how it's worded here, but just I know there's some questions around the community about how short-term rentals play out even beyond ADUs. So if we could just get that little bit of clarity as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bowen. And Ms. Wynn, I will go to you for that last question about short-term rentals. And I also just want to mention I'm remiss in not saying at the outset, I'll have to pause us at 8:30 just to open and then recess a public hearing. But that does give a few minutes, Ms. Wynn, if you want to comment on any of what Councillor Bowen raised, but particularly I think that last piece was a bit more of a question that could be dug into now. Thank you, Councillor.
I'll just clarify that transient lodging is is referred to as short-term rentals casually. Transient lodging is currently not allowed in the city of Beverly. We added language to the definition to clarify that. And that's the reason it's in the ADU piece of it, is because there was some confusion that accessory dwelling units could be short-term rentals. So we wanted to be extra clear. I think the solicitor will weigh in maybe more than me, but yeah, but I mean, it's fairly straightforward that that was just simply meant to clarify existing language and how the zoning ordinance is already interpreted.
Thank you, Ms. Wynn. Solicitor Williams, did you have more you wanted to add? I wasn't sure if your proximity to the podium.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, so the definition of dwelling currently reads, a building used only for permanent habitation by one or more families. The term shall not include a hotel, motel, we are proposing to add bed and breakfast, lodging, and then rooming houses in there, hospital or other accommodation used for transient lodging. So dwelling by definition cannot be transient lodging. So in any single-family district or any multifamily district, a dwelling unit cannot be used for transient lodging. So the way our building commissioner has enforced it is kind of more of like a fact-based inquiry as to whether the lodging, the use of a dwelling is transient. And so what the definition of transient lodging that is being added does is create a bright line test. And so to Darlene's or to Ms. Wynn's point, the only reason we called it out specifically in the ADU ordinance is because there was so much concern that these types of units would be conducive to that type of use. I don't think it needs to be explicitly prohibited in other sections because it already is by definition. And we probably could have done it even without calling it out explicitly in the ADU, but we just went the belt and suspenders approach.
Thank you very much, Solicitor. This is actually a good moment for us to pause and just for us to open, we'll pause our public hearing, sorry, and then we will open the posted public hearing on order number 189. This is the proposal for National Grid Plan 307-08798. Ordered that the City Council of the City of Beverly hold a public hearing on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 at 8:30 p.m. at 191 Cabot Street, 3rd floor, Council Chambers, live stream on BevCam relative to a National Grid Plan 307-08798 Cherry Hill Drive, to install electric conduits beginning at a point approximately 475 feet northwest of the center line of the intersection of San Fonso Drive and continuing approximately 60 feet in a southerly direction to the property of Cherry Hill Park Drive. And this was in the Salem News on August 25th, 2023. Councilors, is there a motion to recess this public hearing until 9 o'clock?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll recess that public hearing on order 189 until 9 o'clock, and we will resume our public hearing on order 184. Councilor Bowen, are you set for yours for now? So, Madam Chair, I'll go to you.
Members of the planning board with question or comment? Sarah Bartley.
Sure. I was going to ask Ms. Wynn if you would just speak a little bit more to the, could you give any more detail around the rationale of not requiring affordability? I think it was the number one question that came up in the survey, and I know you touched on sort of a rationale, as did Councilor Bowen, but I wonder if you'd want to expand it all to speak to why we might not want to add more affordability, given it came up so often in the survey.
Yeah, I mean, our primary rationale for not including an affordability restriction was the complexity of that and managing that for a homeowner. That would require a deed restriction to be put in place and annual monitoring to be put in place, which costs money, costs legal fees to set up the deed, to go through that process, and to do the annual monitoring. As I know right now, I have two single one-unit affordable housing single affordable housing units that were required as part of a larger project, and those individual property owners are not large developers, and they're having a difficulty keeping up with the requirements for monitoring that annually, dealing with rent increases and kind of the requirements that they're required to do to report to DHCD and the city of Beverly. So it's an additional kind of burden that I think would detract from the ability to create accessible, accessory dwelling units. So that's one piece. I think, it's an extra cost on these people that it already costs to build an accessory dwelling unit, and it may deter people from doing it if they need to restrict it. Then the other piece was that the units themselves do tend to, based on the research, be more affordable than other units on the market.
Mr. Mayor? Thank you, Ms. Wen. I saw your hand back there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't want to leave the planning director out here on her own, since I've been very heavily involved in this part of the conversation. We all understand at this point, having seen the presentation, that it's really, this is not about renting a room, right? This is about building an apartment. And so there is a real capital cost to the homeowner in order to do this. So given that one of our goals here is to provide an avenue for a homeowner to stay in their home longer, to help afford the cost of the home, if they're going to need to take out a home equity line or refinance, which is likely, we don't feel that it's our place to tell them that they can't charge a fair market rate for the unit. So that's really the thinking that's gone into it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Turn it back to you, Madam President.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilor Rotundo.
My question was just asked, so there's no need for me to reiterate it. Thank you.
All right. Is there another member of the council with a question or comment at this time? Councilor Rand.
Thank you so much. Many of you have heard me talk a lot about my support for accessory dwelling units, and I love the slide that shared that more than 2/3 of the new housing stock in Beverly has been built in Ward 2 and in downtown in general. So to me, this is a really brilliant opportunity to spread out new housing stock around the city in different wards. And I've been excited for it since 2021, when our housing study came to us. I would love if, as part of today's public hearing, if you could share, and Councilor Bowen touched on an example already, but if you could share another example of a variance that couldn't be used to create an accessory dwelling unit, just because I'm conscious that some of this language we're used to, but not everyone here has ever tried to expand their home or, has come up against a variance and what that means. And then maybe another example of, where's my other note here? I guess that was it for examples. And then I wanted to comment that I also would support the allowance of tandem parking in the accessory dwelling unit ordinance. I agree, and that might just be a product of where a lot of constituents that I talk to are coming from. They're already sort of maneuvering parking and making it work in tight spaces, and I think in general a driveway that you're going to find in other wards probably have a little more space than what people downtown are sort of already dealing with, and I've seen it work in a lot of instances where tandem parking can, create that extra space, add a spot to a dense area. So I would support that, looking at that as well. And then I just wanted to add that in some of my research, I've discovered that in some places in California, for example, there are some of the housing trusts are being used to allow for funding for accessory dwelling units. So sort of like the forward thinking of, we have systems in place that could support the creation of accessory dwelling units going forward. If we, wanted to look at requiring affordability and being a community that supports that affordability requirement with funding. That's not necessarily part of this public hearing, but I wanted to put it out there because I think, this this zoning has a lot of potential for creating housing in a low-impact way that is accessible to a lot of people. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rand. Ms. Vin, I don't know if you had some response to Councillor Rand's, particularly the question about examples where a variance may not be usable.
Yes, can I take up the tandem question?
Please.
So we currently, our parking regulations, even in the downtown, require that their tandem parking is only allowed for same ownership units. So if there's like a 2-bedroom unit, it can have a tandem parking space. But the parking spaces have to be assigned to the same unit. So that provision is very consistent with how we already interpret our ordinance. I think that's ultimately why we made that decision and went that way, but also to minimize, the impact of, say, if you do have tandem parking in a neighborhood and it is kind of a nuisance to move your car, you might be more likely to park on the street and not use your tandem parking. Just because it's provided doesn't mean you'll actually use it. And so I think we're trying to really reinforce the idea that that accessory dwelling unit needs to have an off-street parking space that's dedicated for that unit. That was kind of one of the clear administrative priorities when we set forth to establish this. And so for an example of variance, in all fairness, 6-inch variances are probably not worth it. I probably more likely see, variances going a little bit more into the side yard setback. So a lot of, Councilor Houseman could probably speak on this more than I can, but a lot of the variances that we end up looking at in our review, we sometimes look at them, are side yard setback, rear yard setback, front yard setback, height, so really dimensional things. Parking variances from the parking situation actually go to the planning board and are not called variances necessarily. So I would say our main concern was you have a property with the house is built already to the lot line and they want to build an expansion, they want to build an addition or an additional garage or very close to the lot line. So they have a 15-foot setback. Maybe it's built 5 feet from the setback. A frequent complaint that we do hear when people are building, even within their setbacks, is that, this is too close to my yard. They're looking into my pool. They can see over my yard. So if we build you have a detached garage and you want to put a unit above it, you want to convert the second floor into a unit. But that detached garage is already within 5 feet of the lot line. So it's those situations were what we were trying to avoid. And also, I think height variances would be another example of something that we'd be looking to avoid, where we'd be getting kind of, taller buildings than the 35 feet, which is kind of how we set that limit, which would be consistent with the neighborhood. Most of the neighborhoods where we're talking about these being allowed.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nguyen. Madam Chair, I'll go to you for a member of the planning board, and then we'll come back to Councillor St. Hilaire.
Thank you. Planning board, anyone with a question or comment? Mr. Beckwith.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a couple of questions. First of all, I know that, through reading this, that the Zoning Board of Appeals isn't a go-to board, but where would citizens appeal decisions of the zoning officer if they disagree with them with regard to this? I'm curious about what that process would be for applicants. And the another question I have, and looking at this, everything said to that one of the wording in all of these sections said that one of the accessory dwelling units has to be occupied by an owner, except for 355, section C1, where it says owner occupancy, and it says, or individual with a beneficial interest in the property. And I'm wondering what the difference is, or what that wording actually goes to if it's not an owner, but someone with a beneficial interest, just for clarity, because it didn't seem to follow with the other wording. And that's it for now.
I'm going to ask maybe one of the solicitors to weigh in on the second one. I think the first one, if it's a by right project to be a building permit, they would appeal the building permit. So I don't know where those go, actually. Right, would that,
So
Yeah.
if for whatever reason, the building commissioner didn't believe that a proposed project was eligible under the ADU ordinance, and made that determination, an applicant would appeal it to the zoning board of appeals, and they would review that determination.
So they would in that?
They would. If the building commissioner denies a building permit for whatever reason, the administrative appeal process, next step is to the zoning board of appeals. If the zoning board of appeals rules in a fashion that the applicant doesn't like, then they have a right to go to court. So, yeah. And you want me to field the second question? So I will review to make sure that we consistently refer to owner-occupied. We added the individual with a beneficial interest in the property because sometimes properties are held in trust, like real estate trusts. And so, a trust is not going to occupy the property. And so it was intended to allow, say, a trustee or a beneficiary of the trust to occupy the house, or sometimes LLCs own homes too. Individual owners will set up an LLC in order to, for whatever reason. And we don't want to preclude the members of the LLC from them being able to take advantage of the ADU ordinance. That was the thinking. And so we tried to keep it general because there are a lot of different ways you can have a beneficial interest in an entity. It could be a corporate entity, it could be a trust. That's why the language was written that way. But it certainly should be consistent, and it wasn't carved out to only be included in that one section of owner occupancy. So we should look at that.
Thank you, Solicitor. Councillor St. Hilaire.
Thank you. So first off, just thank you to Ms. Nguyen. I know a lot of work has gone into this, and also to Councillor Bowen. This is something we've been talking about for a little while now, so thank you for introducing this back in November, I think it was. Just wanted to follow up on what other communities are experiencing that have adopted this. I think you had some stats in your slides, roughly 2.5 new units a year, I think is what you said was the average. What are our goals in terms of housing development? Where do you think we'll be in 10 years on this? How many new units do you expect, or what are we shooting for?
I think, what did I say at the last time? I think we're looking at intake of, and I'm just assuming based on other research, and Salem, which I haven't updated that, but 5 to 10 a year. 10's probably high, but in terms of thinking about, it also depends on the market, right, and the labor market and the construction market, right, which is slowed a little bit, but for example, during COVID, when a lot of people were doing projects, that will vary over time too. If people have access money to access it, and let's see, one of the comments from this report it's probably the most extensive report on accessory dwelling units that was done in 2018, said, and this is not for Beverly, but if they're estimating region averaging 5 permits per municipality per year. So across 100 municipalities over a decade, that's 5,000 apartments. And less than 1 in 100 houses would have an ADU. So those are some of the stats that they were estimating.
5,000 apartments across 100 communities.
Across 100 communities, okay. Yes. Yeah, not in Beverly.
This is part of a more regional approach, obviously.
Yeah, that was just kind of an estimate. So, but if we're doing 5 permits per year in Beverly, that's 50 in 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Madam Chair.
Member of Planning Board with questions or comments? Wayne?
Thank you. So it's my understanding that ADUs provide dwelling options with relatively low environmental impact ramifications. I'd be interested in reviewing any research supporting that contention, if that could be made available. Thank you.
It's because they're infill properties that generally require less impact to the actual parcel. They're occurring in a lot of cases in existing buildings, which in and itself is an environmentally sustainable strategy to redevelopment. So, I mean, I think I'm really relying on common sense more than research in this case, but I'm sure there's items that point to the fact that, things like historic preservation and repurposing existing buildings is in fact an environmental strategy.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. Councillor Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Ms. Nguyen, to your team and the administration for the time that you put into bringing this proposal before us and for convening the public this past spring to hear their feedback. And thank you for the folks that are here tonight. I'm looking forward to hearing from you all, so I will try to be brief. Generally, I think this is a good proposal that will allow the creation of new housing in a very strategic manner. To Councilor Rand's point, where most of the development of new housing has taken place in bulk downtown, this will allow for smaller scale development of, essentially to Ms. Nguyen's point, buildings that already exist that are being turned from sheds or garages or attics into apartments. I think the owner occupancy and off-site parking requirements are very reasonable, and that they are a way to address the concerns of residents who worry about any fundamental altering of the character of their single-family neighborhoods, which I don't think this proposal would result in, and that's one of the reasons that I am in favor of it. I did want to make a quick comment about the conversation around affordability. I tend to agree with the mayor in this proposal that does not put forward an affordability requirement out of concern for adding additional burdens around ADUs when, as you mentioned in your presentation, Ms., when these units are more naturally affordable, given the dynamics surrounding revamping a garage or a shed to be an apartment. One thing I would like the city to potentially look into is the option for partial property tax exemptions for those that build ADUs and do meet qualifying affordability requirements. I know that while Salem has a much more stringent affordability requirement, which we're not looking to replicate here, one thing that they also offer is partial property tax exemptions for those units that meet any given affordability requirement. I know you had mentioned this in a public meeting earlier in the spring, and we had communicated back and forth about potential administrative hurdles and that the return on any partial property tax exemption may not be as large as might otherwise be anticipated. But I think, and to Councilor Bowen's point, we should look at, while I wholeheartedly agree that we should not implement a mandatory affordability requirement, we should look at ways to incentivize affordability. So just wanted to make those comments. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sweeney. Madam Chair.
Other members of the planning board who wish to make comment or have a question? George?
Thank you. And I want to reiterate what a lot of people have said in terms of appreciating the work that's gone into this. And, I know it's been a long process. I do think that I want to echo some of the concerns I've heard from others on the variance point. I think abutters and neighbors have a lot of ability to restrict what happens on their neighbor's property when it comes to non-conforming uses. We adjudicate that through the variance process, and I don't understand why we would sort of arbitrarily limit that when it does come to something like an accessory dwelling unit. I was thinking about a non-conforming property that a homeowner wants to add an addition to, as long as that addition doesn't go into setbacks that, let me back up. If your property is non-conforming because it's too close to the street, for instance, right, your front setback, if you expand in the back of the property, as long as it doesn't get too close to your neighbors, you don't even need to get a variance or a special permit for that, right? You wouldn't be allowed to do that, is my read under this ordinance, regardless of whether you could get a variance or not. There are some examples like this that I don't understand why we're not letting the process play out the way the process is designed to play out when it does come to this one very specific use. I may be misreading that, and let me know if I am, Beverly, but you can expand your property up to 25% if it's non-conforming, right? I'm getting it done. So, and you can go above that if you get a variance. And so if you're doing that for, you know, adding a bedroom for your kid or something, I don't know why you can't do that to add on an ADU for a relative or somebody else. And I think my second question was in regards to requiring a special permit in the RHD and RSD districts. Understanding that there are probably not a lot of properties in those districts that will be able to meet all of the various restrictions that we've discussed, whether it's parking, whether it's setbacks, or et cetera. I don't understand if they can meet those fairly bright lines that are in the proposed ordinance, why we wouldn't let them, you know, just receive a permit without going through the special permit process as a municipal district, or as a municipal city, I should say.
Ms. Nguyen?
Are there, is that a question? Okay. I mean, you can expand a non-conforming use up to 25%. Yes, that would still apply, but the relief beyond that would not apply. Well, he's asking about non-conforming situations. So we currently. Well, actually, guys, that is a question for you if I interpreted that wrong, too. We say the rights and reliefs set forth in this section are not available for the purpose of creating, maintaining, or operating an accessory dwelling unit. So currently, we allow a one-family or two-family to expand up to 25%.
Right, that's correct, but as written, I think he's correct that as written, the language says that is not available.
Okay.
So as written, it does not allow the expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming structure under the provision that you were referencing, or by way of variance for the purpose of creating an ADU.
They took my microphone. So, sorry. I am curious about the special permit in the RHD and RSD as well.
Gosh, that came out of our 21-22 process, I believe, and I'm trying to rack my brain as to why we ended up in that situation. But I mean, I think maybe because they're not naturally single-family units, it's just there might be other factors to consider related to those types of uses in those units. They're kind of not the natural uses that are in those units, not the most common expected uses that are in those districts, I should say. But I'd have to go back up to my notes on that one.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my only point there is that it seems like a trivially small number of units that you're going to get in those kind of downtown districts that it seems like, why are we adding extra hurdles to this process that's already going to be fairly complicated in terms of finding room for, you know, carving out another parking spot on a small lot, or it seems like you're not going to get many of those anyway. So, you know, why have that extra hurdle, I guess?
Thank you, George. Madam President?
Thank you. Councilor Houseman, I'm going to go to you and also just mention that at 9 o'clock I'll have to pause us to recess our last public hearing just a bit. And also for members of the council, after Councilor Houseman, I know a few councilors haven't gotten to speak yet, but I'm wondering if, knowing that we will have more opportunity once the planning board has had a chance to weigh back in, I'd love to shift to members of the public so that we can hear from them as well. I know it's getting a bit late and I don't want to have people waiting for the chance to get to hear from them. Councilor Houseman, you're next on my list.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Just a couple of quick comments. One is I also want to join with my colleagues in thanking the staff for the hard work they've done on this, and for Councilor Bowen for putting this forward and really sort of helping to push the dialogue around this proposal. And I am also excited about this proposal. I think it's well crafted. As always with something involving zoning and housing, there are compromises, and this has been a good faith attempt to sort of create those compromises with difficult issues like tandem parking or variances and so forth. So I think that while we can certainly discuss and try to tweak those, in the main, this is an excellent proposal, which I support. One quick comment on beneficial interests. So beneficial interests for trust is commonly part of estate planning. So a couple might, for estate planning purposes, put their house into a trust just to make it easier to, when they pass away, for their heirs to have a more seamless process that avoids probate. So that's one of the reasons, circumstances where you might want to have something like this, which relates also to beneficial interest. I have a couple of different questions. I'll try to take one which I think is short and easy right up front, and that is, if I understand solicitor's comment, right now, all Airbnb and Verbio type units in the city are prohibited under the zoning ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My first question really goes to the definition right up front, or the restriction in this proposal to, see if I can find the exact language, a unit which is for one or more individuals constituting a single family. So in my experience in this day and age, it is very common for couples to live together years before they get married, certainly for an extended period of time before they get married. This definition would seem to restrict young adults who are certainly part of the population that are challenged by the high rents that we have, young adults who are a couple or a unit, from taking advantage of this kind of a dwelling unit. So I wish you could perhaps speak to that consideration and why this limitation is there.
I have the definition of family, Solicitor Williams. Do you want me to read that?
Do you want to answer, or do you want me to?
Oh, you can. But I think the definition is clear, or how we define it as a family is clear.
Right, so the
Solicitor Williams, I'm sorry, before you do that, can I just reopen the public hearing on Order 189? And members of the council, I entertain a motion to recess this to 9:20.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0. We'll return to that at 9:20. Thank you, Solicitor. I apologize.
Is the question as to why do we define family that way, or why is the definition of family used in ADU?
Why don't we start with what is the current definition of family
Okay.
in the
So
zoning
the
ordinance? That may answer my question.
Right, so the current definition of family is in the definition section, which is section 300-5. It's a multi-section definition, but it starts out with A, one or more persons occupying a dwelling unit in living and cooking together on the premises as a single nonprofit housekeeping unit, and further defined as one of the following. 1, any number of persons related by blood, by adoption, by foster home placement, and/or by marriage. 2, up to and including 4 persons not related to each other by blood, by adoption, by foster home placement, and/or by marriage. 3, any combination of persons related by blood, adoption, by foster home placement, and/or by marriage. And then in parentheses, it says such groups so related being 1, for the purpose of this definition, and no more than 3 other individual persons without consideration of relationship that such 3 persons might have, if any, to each other.
So the short answer is this, as worded for the ADU proposal, individuals constituting a single family does not exclude young couples, for example.
Correct.
Or similar situations.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Solicitor.
Another question. Why does this proposal not adopt the state's definition requirements around dimensional requirements? What was the thinking behind if you will, Beverly specific set of dimensional requirements?
We had previously had a limit of 1,500 square feet and heard that seemed too large, and as low as 500 square feet, and that seemed too small. And And I think without really looking back at the state's definition, we looked at other communities, and 1,000 seemed like 1,000 or 1,200 square feet seemed like a very common number, and we went with 1,000. Could we have taken off another 100 square feet? Probably. To do it only, to get a vote, I'm not sure if that was reason enough to do it. That might have been the only reason to do it. That didn't seem to be necessary. And I'm anticipating that that's not necessary, I guess I should say, to take that, but that could be.
Yeah, I just make the observation that by my math, which is not always accurate, nevertheless, a building 30 foot by 35 feet comes to 1,050 feet, and a building 30 foot by 35 feet is not particularly small, especially where you consider that the height restriction, you can build up to the height of 35 feet. So this could actually be a fairly sizable structure in the right set of circumstances. So, I mean, that's not a pro or a con, that's just an observation that structuring around 1,000 square feet doesn't mean we're necessarily always talking about like a tiny house, right, for example. And then I think my last question for the moment really has to do with this question around variances. So there's a lot to be said for sort of bright line rules in a zoning ordinance that provides a great deal of clarity. It makes it easier for the zoning board in this case to apply, and for the building inspector as well, to apply the provisions of the ordinance. Having said that, this is a sort of a hypothetical question that's going to call as much on the city solicitor as much as anything. And I'm far enough removed from my service on the zoning board that I wouldn't hazard to answer this myself. Would it be technically possible to create the allowance of a variance in certain circumstances? So, for example, in other words, not variances as presently in the ordinance, which says, for everything in the zoning ordinance, you can ask for a variance. But just to take a hypothetical situation, Ms. Nguyen, you talked about, building an ADU near the property line for a non-conforming structure, where the neighbors might be concerned that, it's high enough, you can look over into my yard, I don't like that, it's an invasion of my privacy. Could you, for example, provide for a variance that says, a provision that says you can have a variance except for height restrictions within 10 feet of the property line or something like that? So I don't know the answers to whether or not, if there's any case law out there or examples where you've sort of created a nuanced variance allowance. So that's my question. Is that possible?
Solicitor Williams.
Sure. So, as you recognized, I think there are two different limitations. One is the limitation on using the right to expand non-conforming structures, and then the limitation on being able to get a variance, which are, as you know, two different things. Yep. And so there's definitely, I'm going to speak to the non-conforming structure piece first. There's definitely a case that I found in, it pertained to non-conforming uses, but the court very clearly said that a municipality does not need to allow or to pass a bylaw or ordinance that allows for the expansion of non-conforming uses, because the overall objective of zoning in general is to eliminate non-conformities. Yeah. And so I think in the context of the expansion of non-conforming use, I think that case is precedent for the general concept of saying, we're going to now create a use as of right, but you can't apply for a project that will allow you to have that use if it means expanding a non-conforming use. Because right now they can't, non-conforming structure, right now people can't do it at all.
Yeah, but I'm really asking the converse of this.
Right, so allow them to do it, but put restrictions on when you can get a variance.
Right.
I mean, I think if our position is, we can say, we can pass legislation or an ordinance that says you don't have a right to seek a variance at all, I would feel comfortable saying, limiting the circumstances in which you could seek a variance, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, it is. Because it really is an attempt to sort of start thinking through the compromises that are here, and the concerns raised by some of my colleagues and the members of the planning board about, why can't we have variances? And maybe there is a middle ground where you could not prohibit variances across the board, but provide for variances in limited circumstances. So, I mean, I'm thinking off the top of my head, so I don't have a proposal about what those kind of limited circumstances might be, but conceptually, at least, we could do that.
Conceptually, to me, it seems like if in the opinion of the law department, we can have an ordinance that says you can't apply for a variance at all.
Yeah.
I would feel comfortable saying you can apply for a variance, but only in these particular situations. And effectively, what we're doing is limiting the discretion that the zoning board of appeals has in that particular case to grant a variance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Solicitor.
I think for the moment, those are my only questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Houseman. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments, or members of the planning board? Nate?
This is just a small, kind of finicky question here, but outside of design standards, what is the purpose for limiting the number of doors on the front of the house and the ADU attached, or the hiding of stairs along the side?
That was language that was included in the draft that MAPC gave us, but I think the notion of it was for making it, kind of continuing on the theme of that these are secondary uses to the primary use of the house, certainly with the door piece. And then the stairs is an aesthetic piece in terms of, that part of activation and movement through the house should be on the inside rather than the outside of the house.
Gotcha. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Nguyen. Most of the councils had a chance that wants to speak already. Councillor Feldman, I couldn't catch your eye. Did you want to have a chance for a question or comment at this point?
I would just like to thank Ms. Nguyen and the planning department and Councillor Bowen for pushing this forward. I have lots of enthusiastic constituents that are very excited to support this, and I also appreciate the discussion we had previously with the solicitor's office, knowing that this is tightening up the language around Airbnbs and short-term rentals. So very appreciative and very supportive of the ordinance.
Thank you. And Councillor Crowley, I think you gave me the nod that you're okay for now. Okay. So as far as on the council side, I think we're ready to shift to members of the public, but I want to give you a chance if there's any other planning board members.
Madam President, would you mind if I asked a couple questions, because I think they follow up nicely to Councilor Houseman's questions?
Please.
First of all, Councilor Houseman, thank you for asking the question about family, because I had that circled in my notes, so I appreciate that. First, let me say that I support this. I think it's a wonderful thing that we can give those who might be in need the opportunity to earn additional income, help them stay in their houses through ADUs. But I also think that there needs to be a bit of a balancing act here, and it's something that I haven't heard mentioned tonight. And I think as we look at the R6, the R10, and in particular the R15 zones, my concern is, and we saw it on one of the sketches, is that the ADU basically sits on the property line, which I understand it's going to, and I understand that. My concern is with the size and in particular with the maximum height of 35 feet. Basically, my concern is that what we're doing is taking away that abutters, to some extent, their right to privacy, the right to quiet enjoyment of their property. And I'm just wondering if we might consider a lower height on that. The other question I had, Director Nguyen, is dwelling units shall be no greater than 1,000 square feet in total habitable space. Is habitable space defined by the state?
feel like we had that conversation. I mean, it may be in the building code.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember where it's not in our definition. But I think it refers to a building code-ish terminology. But
And would that
Have to
be,
get
would
back
that
to
be the same thing with gross floor area? And the only reason I'm asking is, I wonder if someone who's interested in this would go to the assessor's office, pull their property record card, and look at the square footages that are defined there as to the measure of the house, and then use that to try to figure out what their maximum size is and that sort of thing. And I guess I'm just wondering if there aren't definitions, if we should place some definitions in there.
gross floor area is defined in the zoning ordinance. And habitable space is part of the energy, building and energy code typically. So, I mean, they will have to go find those areas, but gross floor area is defined in the zoning code.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think I understand your comment about, having to figure that out, although I think they're fairly commonly used terms in with contractors.
Okay.
So, or they don't need lawyers in this case if they're by right, but, they need, maybe there's an education component when we put information up on the website in terms of how to get those definitions, how to access those definitions to understand what we're talking about.
Thank you. And I suspect we'll be continuing our public hearing, so I'm happy to turn it back to you so we can hear from the public. Thank you.
Very much, Madam Chair. So I will just remind members of the public, if you didn't get to sign up yet, I will also just make sure that we don't miss anyone here at the end, but we will go in the order that people are signed up. And Vice President Rotundo will help us to make sure that everyone gets heard and has equal time. You have a timer there, is that right, Councilor Rotundo?
I do, Madam President.
Thank you. So every public speaker gets up to 2 minutes to address the council, and Councilor Rotundo has a little clock that he's setting up here, so that will help you be able to see if the time runs out as you're speaking. Please just finish your thought. You don't have to cut off at that exact moment, but if you could draw your comments to a close. And I will apologize in advance if I misread anyone's name as I'm calling you out. When you come up to the podium, if you could, even though I'm going to say your name now, say your name and address for the record to begin, and then you can go ahead and address the council. Nat Carpenter, I believe, is first on our list. Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. So if you would begin with your name and address for the record, and then you have up to 2 minutes.
I too will be brief, as the timekeeper will ensure. Good evening. My name is Nat Carpenter, and I live on Prospect Hill, Ward 3, just barely. I support the proposed ADU zoning amendment to Chapter 300, Article 9 of the Code of Ordinances. With my living situation, although it's not conducive to adding an ADU, the flexibility and decentralized aspects of this proposal contribute to its multiple goals. Homeowners in hundreds of residences in most zoning districts of Beverly will have various ways by right to create a small dwelling unit on their property. This simple living space has the potential to generate rental income, to permit people to stay in Beverly who otherwise might not be able, and to encourage still others to move into Beverly by making the unit more affordable. All this while enabling the homeowner to still occupy the property. In addition, I hope this current ADU proposal will be the first step in future initiatives to incentivize ADU creation and broaden even more the population of possible renters, potentially through subsidies, deed restrictions, tax deductions, and other measures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carpenter. Our next public speaker signed up is Libby Adams. And if you would also begin with your name and address for the record, and then you can go ahead and address the council.
Hi, my name is Libby Adams. I live at 8 Bartlett Street, part of Echo. I support the ADU ordinance because I'd like to expand the opportunity for more types of living spaces in Beverly. Beverly has a lot of single-family homes and also has many families, but Beverly also has people like me who don't need and honestly can't afford 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms. People like me, single people, coupled folks without children, clergy, recent college grads, seniors, all of these folks. And I would really like the types of housing in Beverly to reflect all the types of people who live here and who contribute to the community. And I also fully support any change that would bring more affordable housing to Beverly. I think that ADUs, due to their size, would be more affordable for someone like me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next we'll go to Carol Gerard, please. Name and address for the record, if you would, and then...
Thank you. I'm Carol Gerard. I live at 87 Odell Ave. And I greatly support allowing accessory dwelling units in Beverly. There's certainly not enough housing. I did have the experience of living in what is now called an ADU about 50 years ago in the city of Chicago. Friends had bought a house, which there is called a bungalow in the city. The typical housing in the city was a bungalow up near the sidewalk, a very small backyard, and then a garage that faced the alley. And so then there were also narrow sidewalks that went between each bungalow all the way back. Our friend's property, on our friend's property, the garage had been converted to a small house. The property next door had the same setup. And as far as I know, we were the only 2 ADUs in the neighborhood. We rented that small house on the alley for several years, and the big reason we eventually moved was because our friend wanted his mother to be able to live there. Our address was the same as the front with rear added on, and our rent helped our friends pay their mortgage. The little house had privacy we never would have had with an apartment. Nobody above us, nobody underneath us, and only somebody on one side. I have no idea how long our ADU had been there, and I don't know any of the rules that governed its existence. By the time we moved in, our small house was an established part of the block. And as you consider allowing ADUs in Beverly, and I certainly hope you will, please remember that any newness is going to fade, and any ADU will become a regular part of the neighborhood very shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gerard. It is 9:20, so I'm going to pause us just to reopen our public hearing on Order 189. And in the interest of getting our public speakers to be able to have a chance to speak, I would entertain a motion to recess this public hearing to 9:35.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we'll recess that to 9:35, and we'll resume our public hearing on Order 184 with our next public speaker, Nelda Quigley. We're already to you. That's okay. We just have a lot of practice at switching from thing to thing up here. There's no reason that you would have to. So if you would also begin with your name and address for the record, and then up to 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I am speaking in favor of this ordinance. My name is Nelda Quigley. I live at 17 Pine Road. About 5 years ago, we sold our home, our family home, where we had lived for almost 50 years. And we sold it to a young family who needed all that space. And we didn't need all that space anymore. And we were very fortunate to be able to build on to our daughter's home, an attached dwelling. And there are 3 benefits for us who are in this situation. First of all, we got to stay in our own community. We didn't have to change our voting precinct. We felt right at home. The second benefit for us was, as I mentioned, we were able to free up housing for another young family, which is important to us, that we continue to have a community where we support each other. And finally, and very importantly, as seniors, we want to age in place safely, independently, and to be close to our loved ones. We were very lucky that we made this move just before the pandemic. And so during the time we saw so many of our friends who couldn't speak to or even connect at all with their loved ones, we were right there, and it was so wonderful. I am going to say something off the script. Most of this is off the script, honestly. The idea of having requirement that you have just the one main door into the house, as seniors, we need to have accessibility that having that front door be the only one might not afford. So to think about things in terms of, why am I out of breath? I'm sorry. No, just to be thinking about aging in place safely, to rethink that. And I just also want to thank Green Beverly for offering coaches to us who came in and helped us be able to heat our home efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Quigley. And that was very attentive to the beeping. You're right on it. Our next public speaker signed up is Don Preston. So I know you're familiar now with the process, but if you would begin with your name and address for the record, and then the floor is yours.
My name is Donald Preston. I reside at 3 Pickett Street in Beverly. I'm also a member of ECHO and also part of Essex County Habitat for Humanity. I support this ordinance, and as Darlene has said, I think by the nature of it, it will generate affordable units. But along the way, we also have a proposal that we will be putting before the Community Preservation Committee to actually find some funds and a way to create a grant program for people to help build their ADUs, and along with that, have a deed restriction. And we also have a partner in Hall-Whitaker that will be helping to administer that program. So some of the problems that Darlene brought up, we'll be able to address with that. So again, I support this unit, this ordinance, and thank you very much for bringing it forward. It continues to put Beverly in the lead in our region for affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Preston. Our next public speaker is Diantha Hathison. And I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
I'm Diantha Potason, and I reside at 99 Corning Street in Beverly. I'm also a member of ECHO and support this. One of our members couldn't be here tonight. She's a single parent, and she asked me to read for her. My name is Stacy Rogers, 13 Beckford Street. In September 2021, I moved as a single mother with my 5-month-old son into a small 600-square-foot apartment on Beckford Street that I could barely afford. However, I made sacrifices so that I could live in a city where I felt safe as a young single woman in her 20s with a child. I've always dreamed of becoming a homeowner. Sadly, these dreams feel far out of my reach. My current rent is 40% of my income, so I'm never able to save any money towards buying a house. I want a house where my son has a yard to play in and can be proud to call his home. If I could find a more affordable housing situation, like an ADU, I'd be able to save money to buy the house I've always dreamed of. I value living in a community such as Beverly, where neighbors care about and take care of one another. Living on a property owned by a member of my community would be a benefit to everyone. In addition to a comfortable living situation, I would have the opportunity to support a member of my community, care for their property. Creating ADUs will encourage young people such as myself to move to the wonderful city of Beverly for generations to come. Thank you. And personally, I really like the points that Stacy brought up, because she's somebody who would benefit from having a unit like this, but she doesn't just see it as a benefit to her. She sees as what she can bring to the homeowner and fostering that sense of community and spreading that. So I hope you guys pass it.
Thank you very much. And then signed up on our list, we have one more speaker signed up, Jean Fana.
Thank you very much, Madam President and Madam Chair, Council. I appreciate your time and everyone's time here tonight. I can tell it's important to this community based on the output or the turnout today. I'm Jean Michael. I'm with Harbor Homes at 283 Elliott Street. I'm here to speak in favor of this ordinance. You have all, I'm sure, heard plenty about the struggles around housing in our community and in this community. And you will all be asked to make many decisions around housing over the next few years, and I'm sure many of them will be very difficult. This ADU ordinance, I think, is one of the few times where there's a lot of wins all around and not as many having to pick winners and losers. The homeowners have a true benefit here that they can bring to their own lives and properties. For the renters, these units are naturally affordable, and it's a great option for them. As was noted by council earlier, it is also something that is very strategic. It keeps in character with the neighborhood, and it doesn't bring a big impact to people's personal lives when designed and crafted. Maybe a few more tweaks to be had, but overall it fits nicely in a community like Beverly. I just want to add, as was mentioned before, in further consideration of strategic thinking, Harbor Light and our partners here at ECHO, we are thinking of ways that we can help the city incentivize affordability for people who want to take that extra step and make that option available to the community. And we'd like to do it in a way that is an add-on, an option, but doesn't take away from any homeowners' desires for what they want to do with their property. So we thank you again for your time. Your dedication to this and your consideration on this topic reflects well on this council and your dedication to this community. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. Are there other members of the public who did not get a chance to sign up who wish to speak in this public hearing? Please, if you would just come to the podium and then begin with your name and address, and then you'll have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. My name is Sherry Guerin. I live at 59 Corning Street in Beverly. And I appreciate everything that's been done here. I'm just going to ask that you consider a couple things that were mentioned here a few times, and I'm not sure that they got as much attention as I'm hoping they will in the future, so I'm just going to bring them up again, which is to please, when you're thinking about the design of the units, to please consider accessibility. That's become a huge issue for me in the last year, and in my home, it would be really hard if I were the one moving into the dwelling, the ADU. I wouldn't be able to meet that requirement and still be able to get into my unit. I'm sure we could come up with something with satisfactory, and maybe that's another variance issue, I'm not sure, but, and also the affordability piece, if that still stays in something and maybe a little bit more than forgot the word. But anyway, in making sure as this is going on that you're reviewing things like the affordability piece, and is it actually happening? And if it's not naturally occurring, then what we can do to incentivize making that happen. I think it should be like a set in stone kind of review instead of just, oh, maybe we'll do a casual survey. And the last thing, which I just forgot, everyone's laughing because all these people who know I'm taking a lot of medication that makes my brain not work as well as it should. And it's still not coming to me, so I'll cede my time, and you have 5 minutes left before you have to re-meet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public? Please, Danielle. Name and address for the record, if you would, and then you have up to 2 minutes.
Thank you. Danielle Spang at 16 Mulberry Street. I'm fully support passage of the ADU ordinance and want to echo the thanks to the Planning Department, Planning Director Wynn, Mayor Cahill, Councilor Bowen, and everyone on the committee and all the work that's gone into it. I appreciate and wanted to echo the points relating to revisiting the parking requirements, the lack of variances to create units, whether other communities have included a similar requirement that there be no variances with their ADUs. And then any incentives for affordability that can be provided through grant programs, tax relief, or any other creative strategies. I think this is one tool the city can implement to help with housing affordability, help homeowners age in place, help recent college grads and younger residents continue to be able to afford to stay in Beverly. I think it speaks to the strength of our community that people want to live here, and urge City Council to adopt it while incentivizing affordability where possible, and looking at the implementation and how it rolls out to see if any of the restrictions that may be in place as it passes should be lifted down the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Spang. Any other members of the public who wish to speak in this public hearing this evening? Please. Name and address for the record, if you would.
My name's Brent Hyde. I live at 15 Ives Street. I have a unique situation where I live with a 92-year-old man to, help him stay independent in his house. It's not the same as the ADU, but I can see the joy in his life being able to stay in his house, and how much that means to him in the aging process, and how he can continue to live his life fully. And I think that this proposal will help other people do that, as well as relieve some of the housing market pressures on people. So I do support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public who would like to speak in this public hearing? Councilor Bowen, I understand you have one from someone who planned to be here and is sick tonight. I'll invite you, if you would, just to move to the podium, if you'd like to read that one into the record for us. At least the cord is gone now, so. Anyone who didn't watch our last meeting, I did trip over a cord going that way. So. Councilor Bowen did not, I did.
Very dangerous up there. Yes, so we had comments from Carol Rain from Pratt Street Ave, whose address you have on record from signing up for comment this morning, who wasn't able to be here, but wanted to share that my husband and I own a home in Beverly and have recently retired. It is clear to us that downsizing to a condo would reduce our costs only minimally. Adding an ADU or building one into existing space would allow us to stay in Beverly while offering housing to a young family. I believe that the proposed zoning changes will allow older residents to stay in their homes in Beverly while opening new housing for those who want to live and work here. Please support this ordinance. And that is all.
Thank you very much, Councilor Bowen, and thank you to Ms. Rain. And I'm sorry to hear that you're sick and we're not able to be with us this evening. Ms. Nguyen.
I know we had discussed just mentioning the letters that we received. And
please.
Record. Do you want me to? I'm not going to read them.
But yet, if you would like to say a little bit about just the sort of overarching summary of what you received for public comment.
Yes. So we've had public comment open on this since May, since we did the public hearing. There was a flurry of comment then, and then additional comment received since we, in the last few months, but since we filed the actual draft ordinance in June. Overall, from our calculations from earlier today, we had 38 comments via the online website or via email, with 36 they had to vote yes, no, or I'm not sure, 36 voting yes, 1 voting no, and 1 voting I'm not sure in regards to passing this passing a general ADU ordinance at that time, and largely a lot of detailed comments about things that they would like. A lot of the things that came up tonight, things that should be considered, also from the people who said no and I'm not sure. And then just acknowledging, since we filed the ordinance, we did receive, I think, 6 letters, then 7. We got another one late today, and then I got one in my email during the meeting. So 8 letters that we have heard from Nat Carpenter, from Denny Dart, from Carol Gerard, from Nelda Quigley, from Will Cosmos as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then the last one was from Tiffany, can't remember her last name. Tiffany Collins, thank you. So those will be added into the record as well.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nguyen. I'm going to pause us here. Mr. Kazadi, I know you're being very patient. Thank you. I'm just going to reopen our public hearing on Order 189 and ask for a motion, councilors, to recess it one more time to 9:45.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. So we'll recess that to 9:45, return to our public hearing on Order 184. Are there any other members of the public? I want to make sure if anyone came tonight and wished to speak, you've been patient and waiting. I want to make sure we do get to everyone. As I had mentioned at the outset to members of the council, we will, as a council, be resuming with your vote, if you vote in the affirmative, resuming this public hearing, recessing it to our next regular meeting, given that today is the day after Labor Day, to ensure that if there are people who wish to speak and were not able to be here tonight, they're able to attend, and then we will be able to have fuller conversation and discussion. So I will just say one last call for any members of the public who came tonight hoping to speak. Okay. Seeing none, Madam Chair, I don't know if there is any other discussion or conversation you'd like to have at this time with the planning board here?
The only thing I would add would be to follow on Madam President's comments, and for the same reason, I think it makes sense for us to continue our public hearing, not to our meeting next week, but to our October 3rd meeting. I already know there's going to be some absences from next week's meeting, so to me, it makes sense for us to continue the public hearing to our October 3rd meeting. And I'll wait and let the city council vote first, and then...
That sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So members of the council, I would entertain a motion to recess this public hearing on Order 184 to our next regular meeting, September 18th at 8 p.m.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0. So we will recess this. For those following along, that means we'll be picking up this same public hearing for further conversation and public comment at that time. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Planning board members, I'd welcome a motion to continue this hearing until our October 3rd, 2023 meeting. So moved. I have a motion by Rodney Sinclair, seconded by Derek Beckwith. All in favor? All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Appreciate your time. And
always a
courtesy as
pleasure.
always. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much. At this time, councilors, we will be coming back in 5 minutes to pick up that last public hearing, but I would entertain a motion for a 5-minute recess for the planning board and other members of the public to be able to leave if they'd like.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. We'll be back at 9:45 for that one. Everyone.
I love Rev Kitchen.
Sorry about that.
Thank you to members of the public who are here with us this evening for our public hearing. Thanks for that patience and participation. I know there's a few other folks who have been also very patiently waiting for subcommittee time, and so we're going to be getting to that shortly. And Mr. Kazadi, you've also been patiently waiting, so I will reopen our public hearing on Order 189. This is on National Grid's Plan 30708-798 for Cherry Hill Drive. And we read this legal notice. So Mr. Kazadi, I will invite you up to the podium if there's more you'd like to offer us on this proposed plan. And thank you again for your patience.
We are petitioning to install approximately 60 feet of 4 5-inch conduits on Cherry Hill Drive from existing manhole 934 to the property of 71 Hill Drive, Cherry Hill Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Kazadi. Are there questions from members of the council on this one? Councilor Feldman, I'm sorry.
Yes. Is this for a new tenant or new building?
No, I think they're upgrading their service. They're getting a bigger.
And it will all be on, from the diagram, it looks like it'll all be on the property, basically?
Yeah, so we're just installing conduits on across the street from Cherry Hill Drive, across the street to the properties, and everything else is on their property.
Okay. That's my only question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Feldman. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Are there members of the public who wish to speak in this public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close that public hearing and refer that as well back to the Subcommittee on Public Services for further discussion this evening. And that does bring us to a time when we could take a break for some committee work. So I would entertain a motion to take that break now.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0. So for tonight, we're going to have Finance and Property meeting on the bench. Legal Affairs will meet in the committee room, and I know a few folks are here for Legal Affairs. You'll be in the committee room right through here. And Public Services, you'll stay here in the chamber on BevCam.
Been upgraded. It's very exciting. We've graduated. I usually have the bench. Everyone's ready. Are we ready? Like, do I have to wait for her? Just.
You can use the gavel even.
Yeah, good. It's very exciting. All right, I'm just going to do it because we got a lot on the agenda. Kind of, sort of. All right. Call to order the Subcommittee on Public Services. So just to take these in order that we have, first up, we have order number 219, which is an appointment for James Billings, 22 Winthrop Avenue, to serve on the Commission on Disabilities. Do I have a motion to open this up for discussion?
So moved.
Second. So would we like to, these are appointments, so would we like to set up some interviews or?
So I believe both of the appointments that are in front of us today were here at the last meeting, so we had a chance.
Okay, we had a chance to talk with him.
Okay.
Went very, very well.
Okay.
For both, and
Great.
I would support both.
Perfect. So do we have a motion?
So I make a motion to
Yeah.
approve.
All right.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. All right. Sorry about that. I had watched the whole city council meeting, but it wasn't on camera.
We were on the bench.
Yes, that's what I know you got sent to the bench, so all right, order number 220, appointment for Nicholas Perianos, 19 Puritan, to serve on the Veterans Advisory Committee. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion carries 3-0. Our motion sets back to the council. And this is order number 222, a reappointment of Karen Bloodgood, 116 Lothrop Street, to serve on the Commission on Disabilities. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve that reappointment.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right. So, I don't see that last one. Let me just make sure I have all of them. Oh, they stuck together. Okay. Sorry, just housekeeping. All right. We have order number 228, and this is to set a public hearing. I don't have the order in front of me, though. This is order number 228 to set a public hearing for. Oh, wait, right here. Okay. This is one on the National Grid. This is for Valley Street. We will be looking at a public hearing on September 18th at 7:15 p.m. Do I have a motion to?
Motion to approve.
Right? Do I have a second? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now, the next four are all public hearings from tonight. The first one is order number 187. This was the National Grid petition regarding Federal Street to install electrical conduits. I'd like to open this up for discussion. Okay.
I make a motion to open.
Okay. Do you have a second? Yeah.
Yes.
For discussion? Okay.
So I had a question. I don't know if it was possible to get any more information while we were in those discussions, or what it would take to get the information. But I think for this project, it's the work on Federal Street, where the road is already opened, and there is a plan to repave quite soon. So my question is how quickly this work could potentially take place. Like, is it ready to go and it's one day's work, or is it something that takes weeks to plan or weeks to do?
If you could go to the podium for me, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
If you could, I know you're Mr. Casati, but would you be able to state your name again for the?
Sure. My name is Michael Kazadi, and I'm representing National Grid at 44 River Street. And so with that, I would have to check with our scheduler, but it'll take about 1 to 2 weeks to have that all set.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, the street is already opened up? Is that where we're at with, when is do we know the paving reschedule?
I'm not sure on the
City
paving
side?
reschedule, but I know they've taken up all the old, it's already been milled. They're working on the raised structures now that are already in the street and that type, and with this already being that way, as far as getting this done, I think would be important versus they'll just get it, based on this, they could just get it paved and now they're gonna reopen it
Right.
all over again, so I don't think this, would make sense, and I don't know what type of stipulations or whatever we can do to, so I guess that's where I'm at a loss, as far as conditions.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're sort of in a bind because if it takes some time to do, the update that we have from engineering in their most recent weekly update, I think, is that let's see, the street was milled on Monday, August 21st. The DPW has started to remove the railroad tracks and cobblestones in the section between Bow Street and Broadway. The sidewalk crew is going in, and then the binder course will then be paved, structures raised, adjusted, and final pavement will be scheduled, which sounds like it wasn't scheduled yet as of last week's update. There isn't one, I think, for this week because of the holiday, but, or at least I didn't see one. So I think our options are we could approve with a stipulation that National Grid work with the engineering department and only proceed with this project if it can happen before final pavement goes down on that stretch. I feel like that would leave some room for the engineering department to either push back paving on that section a few days or
At least get
the work
scheduling,
done.
an alignment as far as scheduling on both ends to see if, you know, it can get done at the same time.
Right.
Before it's done.
Because if we wait for a response and then we're talking about our next meeting, it's sort of,
If
that
anything,
time might
we
actually
wanna
be.
rush this
yes,
part
yeah.
through, right. I think we should refer this back to the council as a whole to discuss that, what the stipulations might look like, and maybe have the solicitor weigh in, or somebody weigh in from DPW on, we can make sure that your work would happen before we schedule the paving for the city, and I think then I would be comfortable with that. It's just the timing issue, so. I guess,
We
would I
have to vote
have a
we have
motion to
vote it out of
vote it
here,
out of
so
council? Yes.
Vote it out of
yeah,
council, to go
committee.
back to full count. So I make a motion that we approve out of the committee to go back to the full council.
And recommend.
And recommend stipulations.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. So. All right, so our next order is order number 188, which is the order that is listed as Lovett Street. I don't know if there's amendments that are on the floor. Would I have, because this is not written
Properly.
There wasn't clarity on this, and so, do I have a motion to open this up for discussion?
I make a motion to open discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Right.
And I would move to approve this request with the amendment that all references to Lovett Street in the description of the project be changed to Sawyer Road.
Okay.
Because from my perspective, well, I guess there's either a second or there's not.
No, I second that.
Okay.
Okay.
From my perspective, the plans and the project
Everything else is
seem
fine, it's just-
necessary and reasonable and are there. It's just a correction of that. I guess, though, it might be relevant, because our alternative would be to hold it or not grant it and request that it be resubmitted. So I guess would just have a question for Mr. Kazadi about the timing on this one, if there's a timeline for this project that you're trying to meet.
I don't believe there's a timeline. I think we were just waiting on the petition to get. We're just waiting on the petition hearing, and and our crew will go out there and start the trenching. So,
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I not?
Yeah, I guess it's for, it seems to be for a project that's under construction right now, a building that's under construction right now that presumably has a timeline for completion. So I didn't know whether connecting this additional electric line is critical to completing that construction project, or if there's some other kind of deadline that you're.
Yeah, I think they were just waiting on the electrical part, so.
Yes,
I'm comfortable
with us making the just
like
amending
187.
it, yeah, just changing the, from Lovett Street to make sure it's Sawyer Road. and then passing this through. I'd rather not us have to hold up that project.
Right.
Based on that.
Agreed.
So
All right.
that's the motion on the floor then.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, 179. This is the National Grid Plan regarding Ober Street.
I make a motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, all right. Carries 3-0. And then order number 189, this is the National Grid petition regarding Cherry Hill to install new electrical conduits. Do I have a motion?
For discussion, I just have a quick question that I wanted to ask on it.
1 second.
So the question I have is that up in the area that or was that the Danvers side they repaved? Because no, Beverly, we repaved a bunch up on that area too, didn't we, on?
On Cherry Hill? In San Fonso?
No, I'm wrong.
Okay.
No, I'm wrong. I know what I'm thinking
Yeah.
now.
This is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Okay.
we're good. I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right. Order carries 3-0. All right, that, I believe, is all we have on our agenda tonight. Do I have a motion to close the Committee on Public Services?
Can you do Committee of the Whole first?
Oh, we have the Committee of the Whole? I didn't realize that. Okay. Well, I never called it to order, so, all right. Do you have a motion to close the Committee on Public Services?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Meeting is adjourned at 10:02.
Nice.
You ready, Kim? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, subcommittees, for your good work. We'll call the council back to order, and we'll go to reports from committees. Ms. Kent.
Order number 219, the Committee on Public Services, to whom referred the matter regarding an appointment for James Billing to serve on the Commissions on Disability, have considered the matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 220, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding an appointment for Nicholas
Paranidas to serve on the Veterans Advisory Committee, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve the appointment.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 222, the Committee on Public Services, to whom referred the matter, a reappointment for Karen Bloodgood to serve on the Commission on Disabilities. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve the reappointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 228, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding National Grid Petition 308-27452 Valley Street, have set a public hearing on September 18th at 7:15 p.m.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the recommendation to set that public hearing for our September 18th meeting. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you very much. That carries 9-0.
Order number 187, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding a National Grid Petition 307-06279 Federal Street to install electric conduits, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the application be granted with the amendment to have a timeline clarified with DPW when the paving would be.
Questions or comments? Councilor Feldman.
Just to comment on that, I want to make sure that we know who is doing that. We are looking to National Grid to clarify with DPW to better understand when they will be planning the street and to connect everyone.
Thank you. Councilor Rotundo and then Councilor Bud.
I know you have DPS as I don't know if this can be done on the floor. The engineer department be notified, because they're the ones who actually coordinate all those diggings and everything like that. Is that something that can be amended?
Yes. Councilor Bowen.
Thank you. Yeah, and I wonder if we can get the wording just right so that there needs to be sign off from the engineering department or sort of confirmation from the engineering department that this project won't derail the paving project.
Councilor Houseman.
Can we make a motion to approve subject to a prior sign-off by the engineering department on the timing of this proposal?
I would say we can. Would you like to make that motion, Councilor Houseman?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. That carries 9-0.
Order number 188, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding National Grid Petition 299-20267. So it's Sawyer Road to install electric conduits, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the application be granted with the amendment that to change it from Lovett Street to Sawyer Road as it should be.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order as recommended by Public Services with the correction made in the plans and petition to change Lovett Street to Sawyer Road.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0 with that change to be made, that correction.
Order number 179, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding National Grid Plan 307-82870 Ober Street, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the petition be granted.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 189, the Committee on Public Services, to whom refer the matter regarding a National Grid Petition 307-08798 Cherry Hill Drive to install electric conduits, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the petition be granted.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you very much. That carries 9-0.
Order number 186, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding a reappointment for Ms. Christine Bertoni to serve on the Conservation Commission, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this reappointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 216, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding an appointment for Christopher Cloutman to serve on the Conservation Commission, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0. And I know Mr. Kloutman was one of the folks who waited a long time this evening for our subcommittee time. Thank you, Mr. Kloutman, for your patience and your willingness to serve as well.
Order number 217, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding an appointment of Michael Barone Jr. to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 218, the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom referred the matter regarding an appointment for Kelly Shea Rivera to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this appointment.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And Ms. Rivera, I think you're still here with us. Thank you for spending the whole evening with us and for your willingness to serve as well.
Order number 221, to the Committee on Legal Affairs, to whom refer the matter regarding reappointments for Todd Callahan, Gregory Sharp, and Charlie Mann to serve on the Open Space and Recreation Committee, have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve these reappointments.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0.
Order number 223, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom referred the matter regarding an FY22 Fire Prevention and Safety Grant for $24,047.61 from FEMA to purchase new props to use when delivering public safety messages. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Recommend the council approve this request.
Questions or comments on this one? Question comes on the acceptance of the proposal and adoption of the order. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That carries 9-0. And thanks again to our Fire Chief, Peter O'Connor, for being with us and waiting for subcommittee time to talk with us about that FEMA grant.
Order number 226, the Committee on Finance and Property, to whom referred the matter regarding a fund transfer of $1 million from the road resurfacing account into the Roads and Sidewalk Capital Account to pay for resurfacing when required. Have considered said matter and beg leave to follow. Set a public hearing for September 18th at 7:30 p.m.
Questions or comments? Question comes on the acceptance of the recommendation to set that public hearing for our September 18th meeting at 7:30 p.m. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That carries 9-0. All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Kent. Thank you again to everybody who joined us this evening, members of the public who were here with us, whether in person or watching on BevCam, members of the public who reached out and filed their thoughts and their public comments with our planning department, but also with counselors. Also, thank you to Mr. Kazadi for being with us for the evening. Thank you to our appointees for being with us for the evening, and thanks to all those appointees and reappointees for your willingness to serve as well. A big thanks to Kim in the BevCam booth for making sure that our meeting is accessible to everyone wherever they are this evening, and ability to watch from home or from work or wherever people may be. Counselors are there. Counselor Rotundo.
I have two announcements. One is for Rileside Day, which is going to be happening this Saturday at Livingstone Park. It's from 12 to 3 p.m. There'll be cornhole there. A lot of different activities going on. There will be a beer garden hosted by Gentilly Brewery. And then as well as a plug for the Harbor Fest that will be going on at Lynch Park from 2 to 5 p.m. Where you'll be able to experience a lot of the things that are going on through the Beverly Harbor Management, as well as things locally that are going on there too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Rotundo. Are there other reminders or announcements? Councilor Rand.
I wanted to add that Harbor Fest is Sunday, right?
Yes, Sunday the 10th.
Rileside is
The
Saturday.
correct.
Okay, got it. Just making sure I have it straight. Thank you. Legal Affairs is tentatively planning a meeting on September 18th at 6 p.m., so before our next council meeting, and we will be discussing, well, we're inviting the mayor and also Chief LeLasher to that meeting in order to discuss his reappointment, which is in front of us.
Thank you very much. So that's 6 p.m. in front of our next regular meeting on the 18th.
September 18th, yeah.
Thank you very much, Councilor Rand. One other event this weekend is also the Beverly Grand Prix Cyclocross is happening on Saturday down at Dane Street Beach area as well. So lots going on in the city this weekend, lots of great activities. Any other reminders or announcements from members of the council? I'll just reiterate that our next regular meeting will be September 18th. We will, among other things, pick up that public hearing on Order 184 on the proposed ordinance amendments around ADUs in Beverly. And also, as you heard, we scheduled a few other public hearings for that evening, and then we'll be able to take up some routine business. We also will have those 3 motions and orders that we voted on as first votes this evening available for final passage at that meeting. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. That's 9-0. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.